your devices. I think we're getting an echo from over there. Naomi and Martin at 6 o'clock. Are you ready?
Yes, we are, Mayor.
Yes, we are.
Okay, welcome everyone. I will call the January 18th, 2022 special meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. And we'll begin by welcoming back Councilmember Cavalieri and having him lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Naomi, roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Bond,
Here.
Councilmember Cavalieri, Councilmember Steckler, Councilmember Allison, Councilmember Duque.
To recess into executive session to discuss pending litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 I. We anticipate taking action when we're done. I believe we need 15 minutes, so we will be in executive session until 6:16.
We're here, but we're not.
Council's staying into executive session for another 5 minutes.
Okay, the council adjourned this executive session at 6:20. We're back in regular session. If there's no objection, I would like to move item D, on the agenda up and take care of that now. So if there's no objection, I'll ask Grant to give a brief staff report and present item D.
Quick question, Mayor. Should that come after audience
Let's just-
communication?
We'll get, okay, let's go ahead and do audience
And
communication.
then do it?
So if there's no objection, we'll do audience communicate. Well, I guess we don't need to amend the agenda then. Never mind. We'll go
Sorry.
ahead and do it. You messed me all up.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I see two hands. I saw Mr. Masudi's hands up first. I apologize if I pronounce that incorrectly. And then Mr. Nelson. So your name and address, and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. This is Mansoor Masudi. I'm leading a startup in the city of Mill Creek. Our team of 7-8 engineers here developing green tech technologies, and we get research grants from the government to develop our technologies. The reason I'm here today is not to talk about us, because I received a notification from Department of Energy that there is a large grant opportunity available to create for any, including nonprofit entity, which that's how the city of Mill Creek came to my mind, to develop or to create a science center. And as I was reading this, it's not something we would be interested in, but I think it's something for the city of Mill Creek to look into. It's a very large funding opportunity. Frankly, the model that Bothell has been following came to my mind. They have done a very good job attracting a lot of biotech and science technologies down in Bothell. It came to my mind that if this is something the city of Mill Creek would like to look into, I'm happy to forward the information to somebody there so the staff or your team there can look into this funding opportunity.
Forwarded to the interim city manager, ask Martin if he needs to get in touch with you to get that information. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, you know the drill.
Yes, Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive, Southeast, Mill Creek, Washington. After listening to the discussion last week on the potential new fire contract with District 1, I believe that the 88-cent value I mentioned might be a tad bit more now, because I think I was talking on the 2021 number. Also, for clarity, the EMS levy comes off the 88 or 89 or 90 cents, whatever that is. But after listening to the conversation, I would hope that the city would play a straight up game with this and not try and be cute with holding back a few cents like your communications lady or whatever her name was. And not try and play games with trying to keep any of the money and return it all to the taxpayers. After all, the 2.6 million that you will get into your banked property tax funding is quite a gift and should be really appreciated. In addition, as the others have said, you do have the COVID money banked too. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Their opportunity towards the end of the meeting. So with that, we'll move on to, if we could if there's no objection, move item E up ahead of D and deal with that matter. Is there any objection? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. Yeah, item G. So we're moving item G up if there's no objection. Thank you for that clarification. So with that, hearing no objection, Grant, do you want to go ahead and give the presentation?
Yes, Mayor. Item G is proposed action on a settlement of a lawsuit style Johanna Kirk versus the city of Mill Creek. Just a brief summary of what the lawsuit involved. In August of 2019, Ms. Kirk had her employment with the city terminated in December, of 2019, she filed suit against the city, former Mayor Pruitt, and former city manager Michael Caravino. The lawsuit alleged approximately 10 causes of action. In October of last year, the city moved for summary judgment on all of the claims, and all but one was dismissed. The last remaining claim was one titled wrongful termination in violation of public policy. The city is insured by the Washington City's Insurance Authority, and as such, it was being defended through your insurance agreement with WCIA. Trial was scheduled to start in late January 31st, I believe was the trial date. Right now with COVID, there are a number of trials that are the ones that are going out are going out on Zoom trials, and having a jury trial with Zoom is interesting. In any case, the city and the plaintiffs went to mediation approximately a week ago, and a settlement was reached. The total amount of the settlement is $95,000, approximately $62,000 of it in general damages to the plaintiff, and $33,000 would be in attorney's fees. All of the money is being paid for, and all the payment is being made by the WCIA. The city is contributing no money to the settlement. So tonight we're before council seeking approval of the settlement of the case that would result in a dismissal of all claims against the city and against its current and former employees. So that is what is the request tonight. We've provided a proposed motion. I just want to confirm with Naomi, would this now be resolution 2022-622? I believe that's
Yes, it should be 622 because we moved this ahead of
of the other one.
item F. So
That's correct. Thank
are there
you.
any questions for the city attorney? Seeing none, are there any motions?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-622, settlement agreement in the case style Joanna Kirk v. City of Mill Creek.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Just that we would thank our legal representatives for doing an excellent job, both WCIA and Grant Deginger and his team as well.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did anyone abstain? The resolution is passed unanimously. So where does that bring us? Now it brings us back to item D, city manager search. I'm going to turn it over to the mayor pro tem, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee search team, myself, Councilmember Seckler and Councilmember Duque got together and we worked out our RFE. I forgot what it was called for a second. Our proposal here for everyone to look over. There are a few things just to draw your attention to that needed possible clarification. I know our city attorney has looked over this and made some changes, but he did have one space where he wanted clarification that pops out here. I don't know if all of you can see this, where he put a note on how he would like to pay something. To be honest, personally, I would prefer to let the city attorney determine what he thinks is the best course of action on that, but need a little bit of input on that. And other than that, we did have some things up here about community input and the way that would go. We realized with COVID, that's going to be difficult. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or changes they would like to make there. And after that, the recommended time for proposals is 15 to 20 days. So I would recommend that the dates you see in here are going to be changed to 20 days from the date that we get this approved and posted. And we will be following a process where we are being equitable and transparent. And so this will be, we will post this request, and then it will be sent out to everyone who has told us they're interested, and anyone else that has come forward that says that they would like to give us a proposal. And everyone will have the same duration of time to make sure they get this back in. And on that date, when that is over, then all of them will be opened and they will be looked through. That way it'll be fair. No one can get an unfair advantage, and it's all transparent and out there for everyone to see. So I will open this up for discussion from any of you. If you had any questions or comments or anything you thought you wanted us to change.
Timeline. So if we bless this tonight, when do we anticipate it being posted? Would it be tomorrow, the next day? I'm just trying to figure out schedule for when the time period would be open to receive bids.
Sure. I think however quickly that our staff could get this posted once we approve it. I do know that Councilmember Duque was hoping, and I think she just,
Yep. I
Let
saw
it-
a light.
I think she was hoping that we could actually discuss the job description first before we actually send it out. So that's a discussion that we may want to have. But regarding timeline, I think as soon as everyone can get it posted, once we approve it, and then that would give them 20 days. And then once we get those, we'll need Naomi, the clerk will need a few days to a week to compile all the data in a format for us. And then the committee will need a week to 2 weeks to look over it and make recommendations of our top choices. So that's kind of the timeline.
Councilmember Duque?
Thank you. Yes, that was one of the comments is, I keep going back and forth about the importance of including key, what we're looking for in this, but after some additional thought, I think we're fine. My actual comment for today was before this gets posted, it still does need to be reviewed for typos and some formatting issues, because I found it in grants. And then, of course, the main issue is looking over the amount of how much we're paying, the lump. There's some differences that need to be cleaned up, because this is, as a reminder, the document that was put together a few years ago, and then Councilmember Steckler, Mayor Pro Tem Vignal, and myself all did our own reviews, added additional things, took out, some elements, maybe moved things around to make it more cohesive. So I just wanted to flag that before it gets posted, it still does need a thorough copy edit for any of those issues. Because I found a couple, but just want to make sure the professionals handle that part. Thank you.
Councilmember Steckler?
Yeah, a couple issues I wanted to bring up there for the council, for your input. The committee did have one area that we disagreed on. So we're bringing that forth and let the council have input on that. And that is the area of the of public input and review, possible interviewing of the candidates. That's an area where I think it's important that the council interview and review the candidates. It's the city employees have an opportunity to interview and meet with potential candidates. But the big question of bringing in the city is a rather unusual one. We initially did that before because of our situation with the prior city manager. And I think we go back and look at how effective that was and some of the issues that came out of that. I think it's, we have it in here right now. Personally, my recommendation was to leave it out. I think it's, if we're going to bring the public in and ask for their input and review, then we're going to have to be prepared to, if they don't like one of our candidates and it's our top choice, we better be ready to say we're not going to take that candidate. Otherwise, don't ask for their opinion. So I think it's a rather slippery slope. My recommendation was not to bring them in, but that's just a possible discussion item for the, I open that up to the council for discussion. The other one is the whole area, another discussion item for the council is selection process of which firms we do submit this to. There's a question of how transparent we want to be and how public we need to be. I agree with posting it, putting it on the site. That's great. Everyone now we've obligated, we've done our job there by putting it out to the public. But I think the idea of which firms we actually proactively go out to is one that we should probably talk about. There are some firms that do have bad track records, not good reviews, some bad opinions on them. Do we want the RP to go out to those particular firms? So there becomes a question of what about the selection process of, we post it, if everyone can see it, we're not going to stop anybody from applying, but what about the selection process of which ones we want to proactively send out to? And I think that's an area that I think we should be a little bit more selective of who we actually send an RP. I would not want to send an RP to every selection firm, every firm out there. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it would be a laborious task to go over all of them, and some of them do have a bad track record. So I do think that's something we should talk about in the council, is the selection process. There's another area where we're not in total agreement.
Grant, when we send out an RFP and put out a request for proposal, generally, do we have the ability to select who we send it to?
You can direct it to certain professionals in the field if you want. I think what I heard Councilmember Steckler suggesting was when it would be posted so that anybody that would want to submit a response could, but you might proactively also send out to specific entities, and you certainly can do that.
We send out to, we should meet together as a committee and make a decision on as to which ones we want to proactively go after. Would be my recommendation.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's some slight misunderstanding because I feel that we should send out RFPs to anyone on the committee feels that should be sent one, and not just be up to maybe not just the majority, that we should all be able to say if we think we should get a bid from someone, we should be able to send it out as a member of the committee. And also if anyone on the council has someone they think that should be sent a request for bid, I think we should also be able to send it out to those people as well. So by everyone, that's what I mean. I don't mean people that we have no clue who they are. I mean, people that any of us would recommend. Also, I do want to point out that the part that I put in regarding some participation from the public, that's what I'd like input on, is the way I worded it. What I was having in mind, because I do realize that we are under COVID right now, it's hard to get huge groups of people together. But I saw that Bothell did a few things where they sent out surveys and had some participation surveys. And so I felt that it was really important that even if we do not have a way for the public to come together and do huge interviews like we did last time, that we at least have some way to survey what characteristics they think would be important in their next city manager, so that they can have some input to guide what they would like to see us look for, which isn't quite the same as actually interviewing the candidates, but it is providing some input. And I saw that Bothell did something similar and thought that we should do something as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would thank the panel, Councilmember Steckler, Duque, and Mayor Pro Tem Vinal for doing all the heavy lifting on this piece here. And I'm willing to, first of all, I agree with Councilmember Steckler that the public input piece with COVID might be a landmine that's very difficult to navigate. So again, I'm willing to go along with what the rest of the counselor panel feels. And I'm willing to trust the committee to come up with opportunities for all consulting agencies for hiring. I think the more we put out there, the better. So yeah, thanks for doing all the hard work.
Yeah, I echo that. I guess my 2 cents is, let's not overthink this. I mean, the 12 or so bullet points on a process is what it may include. We don't have to decide this now. I'd like to get the RFP started. Let's select someone and then sit down with that consultant that we decide to go with and work out what is going to be the final process. So I don't think this commits us one way or the other. So, and I don't think we need to make that decision now, but that's just where I'm at. Any other comments, discussion? I don't think we're looking for a vote tonight. I
No.
think we're just looking for a kind of.
Consensus, some information. I think we talk about timeline again. As I understand it, the standard is a 15-day turnaround for
15 or
15. I
thought you said 50. That's why I wanted.
No, 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 15-day turnaround for RPs. So if we could get this posted as early as tomorrow, that would allow us to make the date that we were looking for of a selection, I believe was February 22nd on this timeline here, that's in the RP. Because we're gonna need about a week to finalize it and come back to council and present to council for the final opinion. So
Someone can run spell check?
I was recommending, I heard it was 15 to 20 days, and I was recommending the 20 days because I thought we should leave it out there to try to get as many people to participate as possible and to add the extra time for someone to happen to come across the posting.
if we do 20 days, then we should change the timeline here because that won't work. This timeline's based on 15.
And I also said that we would change the dates based on when it actually got posted, and the dates would flow with the 20 days from the date that it gets posted. We would do it from there.
Personally, I think 15 is a stand, I'd be fine with 15. We're,
Well, what's the process when you, so whatever the deadline is, how long are you taking from the end of that deadline to when you come back to us with a set of,
well, it's gonna take you 15 days to get it in, and then you've got a collection of RFPs that are gonna have to be sorted. And somehow the staff is gonna have to help with some type of matrix or some way to evaluate them. Otherwise, you're gonna have 15 different, you're gonna have how many different approaches to this? It could take a long time to go through all the RFPs. Which is another reason why I think it's better to be a little bit more selective on who you want the RFPs to go out to, because respectfully, you're gonna have to go through every single one of these. That's gonna be a huge undertaking. So if you wind up with 50 of them, that's a lot of work.
well, 15, or, I mean, we're talking a difference of a week. If it got published tomorrow, 15 days would be the 3rd. So the soonest next council meeting, and I'm sorry, it would be the 3rd of February.
Well, yeah, but you haven't had a chance to, if we post them tomorrow,
At 15 days, that'd put us at,
15 business days,
oh, it's business.
it's business days. Yeah, 15 to 20 business days. So if we did 15 business days, that's 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5,
it's
6,
20
7,
days.
8, 9, 13, 14, 15. That puts us to
Just 20
Let's just
days.
do 20 days.
20 days.
I'd also just like to,
Puts
The-
us, I'm sorry, Councilmember Decay,
okay.
I apologize for interrupting you, but 20 days will put us at a deadline of February 15th just to get the RFPs in.
Mhm.
Then you got to sort them, review them, and go through them all. You won't be able to present those to council. I mean, you might be able to present them to council by the 22nd, but that would really be pushing it. So you're probably looking at March 1st. You're really, you're pushing out your dates quite a bit.
Right,
So let's say March 1st.
Well, Les had
was-
something to say, council member.
Sorry.
it was two parts. One is in terms of the time between now and waiting to get the RFPs in, the proposals in, we as a committee can be working on those matrices to determine, so there are things that we can do to make sure that we're like ready for when it comes in. Also just wanted to flag that we do want, there's still the question about the monetary aspect, right? About what that number is. There was a question from Grant. So, I would recommend that we would be requesting posting by Thursday, just to give them a full day to be able to just not automatically assume next day, because we still do, this does need to be proofread.
Councilmember Bond and Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you. So last week during the discussion, we heard that we only had one choice because nobody else had the bandwidth out of 4 or 5. No, I'm not saying that's accurate. I'm saying during the discussion, it came out that possibly really limited to only one firm if we had to move really quickly because other people were too busy doing other searches. So if that's the case, I mean, I would love to have a whole bunch of options, but I'd rather take the 20 days and give everybody a chance to get some applications in and see what we have.
Councilmember Steckler.
In response to that, the reason why we only had a few firms, we had put the request out who was available immediately. So then consequently, last week, we made the decision, we're not going to look for a firm that's available right now. It could be whenever they're available. If they're available in 30, 60, 90 days, that's fine. Just are they interested in applying for the search? So the response last week was based on who's available right now, and there was very few that were very available right now. So my apologies on that confusion there.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see what the 5 days or another week or even two would harm the process here. I'm a more the merrier kind of guy because let's face it, we don't have a gun to our head in this process. There's no deadline of February 15th to March 1st. I'm certainly open and would prefer that if we were able to get the RFP out and it could be heard by more bidders, the more successful we have an opportunity to be. Thank you.
Any other comments? What's the consensus? I personally am comfortable with 20 days. And assuming that runs from Thursday, so I think that's the realistic time frame to get this thing polished up, typos and grammatical corrections made and get it posted.
So
Any-
Thursday for posting,
Have
which
it-
would be the 20th.
Correct.
Okay, and then we're going to
And
look.
do we need to confirm that with, who will be posting it? The clerk or the communications department?
I'll let Martin figure that
We
out.
may need
But
to
we'll
con-
figure that out. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so my question is, if it's the clerk, will she be able to get this done and do it by Thursday? That's my question. Or do we need to anticipate a little more time?
I think what we'll do is we'll evaluate, just to let you know, our clerk is out ill today. So I'm not sure how long she'll be out. Thank you. And what we'll do is we'll assess tomorrow morning, kind of where we are with the process and what the soonest is we can do that. So I'll talk to our marketing communications and our clerk to figure that out. And I'll let you know in the morning.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
So if we go with a 20-day, let's say with Thursday right now is a working one. 20 days, that would put the deadline at February 17th. And our next meeting's on the 22nd. That's probably not enough time to turn around all those RFPs for a finalized list of recommendations to you, to the council. So I'd say we're looking at a presentation to council of a short list on Tuesday, March 1st. So in response to changes on the RFP, it would go from February 22nd now to Tuesday, March 1st.
I think the discussion was 20 calendar days, which would put
Calendar
the
days.
deadline at February 9th.
Okay, the information I had seen was 15 to 20 business days.
Well, we were just talking, well, to clarify, I was suggesting 20 calendar days. Not business days,
Okay.
20 calendar days.
Okay, as long as if it makes, yeah, okay, as long as you know, as long as it makes 15 business days, that meets the criteria for the search firms. Their criteria is 15 to 20 business days. Okay, so not calendar days. If you do 20 calendar days.
Yes, we would.
So if you want to do calendar days instead of business, all right, that's fine. So that would be, it would go out on the 20th,
If it goes out the 20th, by my math, it makes the deadline the
7.
9th.
14th, the 9th, February 9th
Correct.
is when we would get them in. And the next meeting is the 22nd of February.
Unless we had reason because of the fire or other reasons to have a special meeting on the 15th and people were available.
Well, and if we give the clerk approximately a week to compile, I don't know how long, I mean, everyone has other things that they're doing. They're not just sitting here waiting for these. So I assumed she would need approximately a week. I thought that would be realistic to give time to compile that data. And then we're going to need time as a committee to go over the data to make our recommendation. So I guess my question is, can we do that in 1 week? But
let's
yeah,
not-
that brings
let's-
us back to March 1st.
Let's not get hung up on, let's just get agreement on the RFP that will get it out for 20 days and then let's take it from there. For all we know, we might not get anyone submitting a proposal.
Yeah.
And we've got to send it back out. So let's not debate over what happens after that date.
And we might have some top line criteria that'll make the selection go a lot faster.
Right.
But for the purpose of the RFP, then the date on the RFP will stand at February 22nd. Just for that's the purpose of this discussion.
February 22nd, we're talking 20 calendar days from the date it's published. So that would be February 9th.
That's the selection process date was in the RFP.
Oh, I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
In the RFP, we put down that we will make a decision by February 22nd. you have to let the selection firm know when would we be wanting to select somebody to start. And we would not be prepared to start anybody until no earlier than or by February 22nd.
Can you point us to where that is stated in the RFP?
Sure.
Yeah, we
It-
need to adjust that, the timeline once we put for whatever. day
It's at
we
the
decide to
top
post it.
schedule, second page, third, see where it says schedule in there?
No, I'm not,
You look at the RFP?
I'm looking, trying to see page 1,
Page
about the
2,
city, what
page-
the city's schedule.
See it in the first paragraph?
What is, I guess, is there a reason why we need to state in the RFP why we have a self-imposed deadline for selecting?
The search firms want to know when you intend to start,
We could take it out if you,
but that's why it was put in. It's a standard practice to let the search firms know, yes, we're going to do a search. When do you want us? When do you want this search?
Would it be better just to say we'll make a selection within 30 days of the close of the RFP?
You,
I think so.
within the close of the RFP.
I mean, I think I'm just wondering why,
We put the date.
Councilmember
because we
Duque, you have a
still
comment?
date.
Mike,
I also wanted to say, it's not just reviewing the RFPs. We still wanted them to do potentially interviews with them, right? For the consultants.
No, I believe we will do the selection, a committee
The
to
selection
narrow
committee will
down
do it.
finalists who will come in with a recommended list of finalists that we'd like them to interview with the council.
Great, thank
We
you.
won't interview with them, but the council will.
But the council will. Fantastic. Thank you for that clarification. And yes, I was going to agree, I was going to say about the 30 days within, because then that flexibility allows us from when it gets posted to when all of those dates, we're not having to fiddle around with dates in particular.
I second that.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how the February 22nd date would have ever worked if we're contemplating interviews.
It was a different schedule.
I
Okay.
had it as a placeholder.
Okay.
It was a different, no, I actually put that number in. And I put that number based upon the original schedule we had, but it was based on a 15-day schedule.
So-
And with a 4 or 5 day turnaround review of the RP. So it doesn't work.
So where in the RFP do we say how many days it's going to be out? Oh, I see proposals. So on page 5,
Okay.
we would change that to February 9th. And why don't we just say we anticipate making a selection within 30 days by, what's our calendar in March?
How about 3/1?
I would say 3/8, just to give, 'cause
Okay, 3/8.
that gives us a month. Is that acceptable? It's 20 calendar days, February 9th deadline, anticipated selection by March 8th. We all there?
Yes, now we just need to decide on the part, I honestly recommend just letting Grant say what he thinks is the best thing where he had put this question in here. and
Where is
on
that?
Page,
Oh, fees, and on
the
page
fee,
6.
he has a question and honestly, I feel like that's more his lane than mine.
Mayor,
Please.
we had in the document, there were two different methodologies for payment. One was a lump sum and the other was monthly billing, but we weren't identifying a guaranteed maximum price. Seems to me what you might want to do is ask for a lump sum and then maybe have payments structured at certain milestones in the process. You don't need to agree to that right now.
Could I address that?
Sure.
I believe what was here is it's not a lump sum payment, it's a lump sum fee. That was the difference.
Right.
It's a lump sum fee that we want to see what we're getting into, but we're going to pay them in monthly payments.
So we're going to do an hour, we're going to have them charge us hourly then with a guaranteed maximum price is what you're essentially
Not
saying.
hourly necessarily. Say that they're going to do this search for $20,000.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to pay us and it's going to take you 10 months. We'll pay you $2,000 a month. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's not going to take 10 months, but that's the idea. So we'll pay monthly based upon the lump fee that they're going to propose to us. So I apologize. It says lump sum fee. You probably thought it was lump sum payment. It's not. It's a lump sum fee.
Does anyone know what the standard is in the industry? Do they all bill on a lump
This came
sum?
from the standard. This is what we did on the last RFP.
How do we know that?
Well, I don't know that that was based on the standard. That's just what we did last time.
Well,
I mean,
I talked to the gentleman who put this together for us, and he told me this RFP was based upon standard practices. So
where I was heading is, couldn't we just provide that it would be based on an amount not to exceed specified, rather than saying, I mean, what,
didn't matter. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, it seems like some of these details are things that we don't need to detail in an RFP that will hammer out in the contract with who we select.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the point that we wanted to make is we don't want someone to come in and say, I'll do your RFP for $10,000 a month.
We won't take it
Yeah.
if that's what they come in with.
But
then-
that's why you're giving them some criteria here. Yeah, we're giving you some but in the RP, you're giving them some criteria of how we would like to pay. We'd like to pay based on a lump sum fee that you're going to give us, and we'll pay you out monthly, depending upon how the services are rendered. But that, you guys want to do something different?
Isn't it per placement? I mean, it's like they take on a task or a job and they say, all right, the job is going to cost 20,000 or it's going to 25,000. I mean, the city's good for it.
That's exactly it.
All right.
That's a
leave it
lump
at
sum
that.
fee. That's what it is. It's a task and we charge you X amount. So it's a lump sum fee and the city will pay you monthly. We're not going to pay you all up front. We're not going to pay you. We're going to take your lump sum fee and break it out monthly. But that's just a proposal. You guys want to suggest something else?
I'm trying to remember how our contract actually worked with the last consultant, because I don't think we paid monthly. I think we had milestones. So when we hit when they brought us a certain number of candidates, we paid them a certain amount. When we got to the finalists, we paid them another amount. And then when we made our selection, we paid the remainder.
They actually, their proposal was different than our RFP and we did accept it.
And that's my point. So should we just drop the method of payment?
Well, this is the cleanest.
You could, if I could, Mayor and
Yes,
Councilmember Steckler, you could say that you'll have a lump sum fee and you will negotiate the timing of the payment with the successful applicant or recipient.
Be that I'm comfortable with what our city staff recommend for the amounts or looking it over, in addition to the editing of, just copy proofing. That was one of the things, that's what I meant to say, that I think there needs to be that look through of this before it gets sent out. So I'm comfortable with either of what you guys just shared. Thank you.
Grant, I think your suggestion was a good one, and I think I saw heads nodding.
That's fine.
Okay.
Could you propose the verbiage for us that you want?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that.
Then we know it's approved by him. Because it's the verbiage.
We all good? Okay. Where are we on the agenda now? On to item E, the main show for the evening, fire services, fire and EMS services. Director Todd.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and City Manager. Strange to be here, but I hope that works out. This is a test because next week we're going to have another hybrid presentation, so we'll give it a rip tonight. So thanks to Joe for helping us set it up tonight. We'll see. Is the microphone working okay, or is that in and out? Okay, good. So the first trick is I've got to remember how to open up the presentation. And Joe is here if I can't figure it out, but I think I got it. Is that right? It's there. Look at that. Do I have to? Oh, I didn't share it. Okay. Help me out. Yeah. Yep. Here's your microphone and I can do some. Okay, thank you. So is the audience out there, is someone in TV land seeing that okay? Looking like they are. Okay, so thank you. So here we are once again. I'm standing in for Karen Reed, who's still out of town, and I'm going to do the best I can to do a little bit of Karen Reed channeling on this, but we are once again talking about our future fire and EMS services for Mill Creek. Same story, just for those who may be new to this, what we're doing is we're continuing to deliberate on the details of the proposal for annexation, both this month and next month. It's going to continue through at least February 8th. The schedule calls for discussion and public comment opportunity every meeting in January. So no one spoke about it tonight other than Mr. Whip Nelson, which we appreciate, but there will be an opportunity in particular on February 1st and February 8th. And our communications folks, as they described last week, will make sure we get people have an opportunity. If council agrees to proceed, the schedule calls for annexation measure to be placed on the ballot for April 26th. That's kind of our end point in this whole thing. Tonight, three things we're going to talk about. First one is kind of following on to what we started last week, talking about what we would do, what the city would, if the annexation is approved. How would you decide to change your budget plan, since we will no longer be paying for a fire and EMS contract of $4.3 million. Second part, we want to start the maybe a harder discussion. If the annexation is not approved, what are our options? How would the city go about coming up with a funding plan? And then the third thing is Grant is going to give us what we promised last week, is going to give us a synopsis on the guidelines concerning involvement of both the city and city council members. So we're making sure we don't do anything wrong as far as PDC is concerned. Last week, you asked for two things that I heard back. I think the mayor asked for this one. He wanted to have a recap of the open and vacant positions in the 21-22 budget. So that's a real quick recap. There's 6 vacant police officers. We've talked about quite a bit. Police department's making good progress on that. They've got 3. I put down pending start dates when we did this last Friday, but I understand 2 started today and 1 more starting soon. And then we're still recruiting for 3 more. I think they've got 1 interview scheduled in the next week or 2. So they're making good progress on that. But fundamentally, we've been down, but that just fill those spots are in the 21-22 budget. There are 6 spots. So we're working on filling. We have that 1 open police support position that's in the process of getting started recruiting for that. We have the vacant deputy city clerk. They've been interviewing for that, have not been successful yet, but that interview process has started its post site. And the last one wasn't an open on the budget, but Christy Schmidt went up to Lake Stevens. And so we're in the process of working on that offer on Friday, and we're waiting to see if she will accept our offer. So we're making good progress there. So bottom line, not a lot of positions you are still open at this point. Second question that came from Councilmember Steckler was quick recap on the major incompletely funded capital projects is the way I took that. What are the big things that are out there that we have in our capital plan? We've heard Laurel Gimzo talk before about there's the starter money on some of those things, but there's some big ones out there. So reminding folks, the DRCC, early concept stage, that's a big project. We've only got a couple $100,000 in the budget for doing some planning, but any money you want to spend on actually building that is yet to be found. eGov Spine Road, we haven't talked about that one much, but there's this debate discussion the council needs to have when we get a chance to really talk about what do we want to do with that spine road out there. Remember, the original idea was to have a spine road that take people off the highway, brought them through the shopping area, through the residential areas. That's got some challenges to it, so it's not inexpensive. And in the absence of that road, some of the developers have gone ahead and done their own things. Like the farm has added quite a bit of the road on their own, but it's still an expensive project. Public Works Shop, we haven't talked about that for a while, but you'll notice that more equipment is out here. This is not a good place to have equipment for kids to climb on or trip on or whatever. And that's been an issue for a number of years, those of you who've been around and listening. So that is still at a concept stage. We don't have many money planned for purchasing that if we have that opportunity. Mill Creek Boulevard rehabilitation or upgrade. We're going to talk next week about that Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area plan in terms of a long-term, how that might fit into our comp plan update, what we might want to see in terms of redevelopment for an economic opportunity. But we can't wait for 20 years when something might get built. We're going to have to do something about that road profile. Remember, we put off the stormwater pipes, we put off the repaving of that road. That is one of our high priorities to fix. There is no money right now allocated to that. Grant funds might be available, but again, something we don't have money funded for. And the last one I just put down TBD, there's a number of surface water utility infrastructure rehabilitation projects. That's a mouthful to say, we don't know what we don't know. We've got Angela Bolton on board. We've had Frank on board for a while. The more we look, the more we listen to the community, we go like, oh, this water can't flow uphill and get into this spot. So there's some spots where the water is not flowing the way people would like it to flow. And so we're saying there may be some projects that are yet to be determined that we would have to dig up and put in a new pipe or increase the size of a pond. So those are also potential things out there. Lots of dollars, but that was the request. What are those scary things that are out there?
Director Todd,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you, for instance, the spine road, that's pretty, for the most part, it's been around 10 million is the number that we hear. Can you throw some numbers on some of these other projects? Not just back of the napkin, good start,
Yeah.
whatever, because they're pretty big numbers. And
These are,
so,
yeah, so DRCC, if you guys want to do a phased approach, you could start with a couple of $1 million for this, a couple millions for that. But I think you guys, when we did the felt board exercise in here, you guys came up with some $20 million kinds of plans. So that's out there. You wouldn't have to do it all at once, but big. Ego Spine Road, as much as the road, as other pieces have been built, I've heard that $10 million number. We asked the engineering guys, what would it be? It seems to keep being $10 million. So think 5 to 10, it's big. Public Workshop Yard, one of our ideas was to get some share the spot. Silver Lake Water District, $1 million, $2 million on that. Big Boulevard rehabilitation upgrade depends on whether you want to just repave it or whether you want, let's make it a walkable, pedestrian friendly area with different kinds of parking, whatever. You could spend $1 million, $3 or $4 million probably. Surface water stuff. I bet there's couple $100,000 projects out there.
Thank
Hear you?
thank you. It helps put it all in perspective. All of a sudden that $2 million windfall, if we didn't give it back, doesn't go very far.
Yeah. I think this is more long-term. There's some serious planning we need to do. I think Laurel's is already chomping at the bit to get us started thinking about 23, 24 and beyond, but we've all been in that position with COVID. We're kind of in still recovery mode, so it's hard to think about those big projects.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Todd, now that you've touched on the public workshop a little bit, I remember 2 years ago, we were ready to pull the trigger on that and have that. And the Silver Lake Water District, obviously wanted to expand their footprint, if you will, for their employees. So they nixed the sale, for lack of a better term. Have we made any forward progress on the water district's maybe intent on selling that property to us? Is that, I know we talked about that had come up for availability or opportunity again. So I'd like to hear more on that if you know more.
Yeah, in general, I wish I had a picture, but think about the back half of the back 1/3 of the property is the tank. Of course, they're going to keep. The middle third was the shop area and parking area would be good for storing equipment outside and inside, but that's the part they really wanted to keep during COVID because they were separating into 2 workforces so that COVID didn't wipe out our water and sewer plant. So that was smart on their part, and they're still doing that. The front part is the old office building. It used to be Silver Lake's original building. Their board of directors did take action, or at least they went so far as to get their staff to split it off. So in their process of splitting off the front 1/3, that is not as attractive to us as the middle 1/3. But that is going to be an option for us to look at that. It would take some more reconfiguration. I'd love to see some sort of shared opportunity where they won't need that all times forever, but maybe there's some way we share part of it, lease part of it back, vacate if they've got COVID again. I don't know what it would be, but something creative might happen. But anyway, it's moved a little bit, but not much. That's not they're not anxious to get the money. They're more anxious to keep their workforce separated.
Yeah, they didn't nix the sale. They just COVID hit and they decided they needed to use it to separate their employees. But I think their former city manager reported sometime last fall that he had touched base and they're still interested in selling. They just can't give us a time horizon.
Yeah, and they know we're first in line. Basically, we've got that right of first offer sort of thing. So when the time comes, and we've been talking to them, but they are doing the legal thing and we'll split it off. It's kind of a complicated piece of property because there's a lot of stuff underneath the pavement. Okay, so on now to the main theme for tonight. And so this chart, I'm going to make you guys dwell on this until we really figure it out. Really, the trick is we've got 4 different options and Karen's presented to us before. This is the same slide with maybe just a few tweaks here and there to hopefully make it more clear, but we really got those options of retaining all the money. I guess I should back up. This is talking about the fact that we won't have $4.3 million to pay in 2023 as we have been in 2022 for fire and EMS services. So the question is, what would you like to do to adjust your budget now that Laurel is no longer writing a check for $4.3 million to Silver Lake Water, or excuse me, to Surfer. Let me put it that way, District 7. So your options are retaining all that money and doing something other with it. That's option 1. Option 2 is retaining some of that money, giving some of it back through reduced general tax rate to the citizens, but retaining some for some city purposes. Option 3 was retaining none of that. And we've heard people talk about that. take all of that money out of our budget and give it back to the taxpayers for them to go and pay their new bills to South County Fire. Or option 4 would be somehow reduce our taxes even further to make it cost neutral to those taxpayers. And that's very difficult. So down the bottom, pointed out, I've got to be able to point 2 ways here. But revenue neutral to the city or revenue neutral to the taxpayer. We talked about that last week. And really here in gory details, option 3, revenue neutral to the city, eliminates that $4.3 million. And that comes about from 2 pieces. Right now, we get $1.7 million per year from our EMS levy. That will go away. When we annex, it has to go away and also expires, but it will go away. And then the other 2.6, so 1.7 plus 2.6 makes the 4.3. 2.6 is coming out of some sort of general fund revenue sources. We get general fund revenue sources from lots of places: sales tax, tickets the police write, recreation fees. But it's easiest to think about and probably most reasonable for you to consider reducing your general property tax levy as a way to reduce your income overall, your revenue income overall by $2.6 million. So revenue neutral to the city would reduce our general levy from what it is now, 6.6 million, to down to 4 million in next year. That's revenue neutral to us. Cost neutral to the taxpayers, option 4. They collectively, city property owners collectively, all together are going to have to pay 7.4 million under annexation. As we've talked before, fire is much more expensive in the future because we've had a great deal for a long time. Cost neutral to revenue, cost neutral to the taxpayer requires eliminating that 7.4 million. So you get the 1.7 from the EMS levy, but then we'd have to somehow find $5.7 million. And so we'd reduce our general levy from 6.6 by 5.7, and we'd only get 0.9. And to do that, it would require substantial cuts in
Right.
existing city services. Mr. Mayor.
We've seen these slides before. I would encourage us to add a bullet point to option 3, which is to reflect the 2.6 million in bank capacity if we returned it all. Because that is, I think, an important consideration that we'll get to discussing, is that we would return it all, but we'd retain that capacity. So in the future, if we decided there is something we wanted to raise taxes back up for, we'd have that capacity. So
Yeah, and that was one of the slides we covered. Excellent point. We covered that last week, and Laurel Gimzo, our finance director, has confirmed that with the state and with the county, since our highest lawful levy has now been set by what is in place today. If you reduce that by no longer making this payment to the fire district, you still have that same highest lawful levy. So instead of having that $103,000 of bank capacity we talked about last week, you know, have $2.6 million more up to that, plus the 103. So you saw last week, we talked about 2.7 being money that you could apply to future things at your discretion. Remember, those monies don't appear until you choose to impose those. And so you wouldn't be able to access that until we're done paying the 4.3 this year. So, but in 2023, you could start talking about, would we like to keep back $100,000 for this or do some other things with it? So that future capacity is what the mayor's talking about. That kind of makes sense. There's a bunch of numbers. I've been waking up in the middle of the night screaming, going if I can get them straight. But I want to pause and make sure that those numbers kind of make sense and you kind of think about what we're doing. Because our next thing is the homework I threatened to have you talk about what's important to you as you make this decision.
yeah, because going to option 2, to Mr. Nelson's comment about returning every penny, if we decided to hold back 2 pennies per thousand, just keep in mind that we don't see that till the earliest next May. Those start with the next tax assessment. So if there's some that we retained, we don't see a single cent of that until the property owners submit their tax payments by April 30th. And then subsequently, the county issues our share of that to us.
Exactly right. Yeah, so you'd be making the decision next November when you set your general tax levy for the 2023 tax year. You'd be making that decision at that point to say, let's keep 2 cents of that or 5 cents of that or whatever.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, it's not like under option 2, we suddenly have money in our hand, in our pocket to spend right now.
Yeah, it's all talking about 2023 eventuality.
Right.
And similarly, the annexation would take effect in 2023. Talked last week, we would become part of the RFA immediately, start paying South County Fire, or our taxpayers would start paying for South County Fire, excuse me, in 2023. Councilmember Duque.
My question had to do, and if this is too early, apologies, I didn't see it in the PowerPoint. It was, I'm having a little difficulty understanding the fire inspection and fire marshal aspect. And so from my understanding, then to be able to pay for that, since it doesn't come out of property owners, that means we would need to go with option 2 if we wanted to pay from that in something there. Or if we went with option 3, we'd have to cut from somewhere else to then pay for that. Correct? Is that the difference between option 2 and option 3?
Exactly right. So you're
Okay.
down a little bit in the details and that's fine. And so the trick is when you round things to 6 point something or 4 point something million, it kind of is down the noise. But yes, we've talked about it on the order of $100,000 a year will be the cost we pay for fire marshal and fire inspection services, even after our citizens have annexed into South County Fire. That's the way the RFA is set up because they've got the city of Linwood looks different from unincorporated county. So you're exactly right. There's $100,000 in round numbers there. And then if we elect to buy the fire station other than through cash or through reserves, you would probably be paying that $60,000 per year. So I've been thinking the 100 plus 60, about 160,000 you'd really like to keep back because that's still part of our fire expense. So we're not going to get rid of all 4.3. We kind of hang on to the 160,000 out of that 4.3. So you got me tripped up.
I think you mentioned last week, though, that some of that is offset with payments from the applicants. So the 160,000 would be a gross number, not a net expense to the city. Is that correct?
Exactly. And another good point. Yeah. So when a developer comes in and submits something for development review, we charge them fees for development review and for building permits. And so the development part of that, which typically the fire marshal is doing, is something we get revenue for. Business inspections on a regular basis, we do not charge for those today. We don't get revenue, but we will have to pay them to do this. Or we could elect to pay somebody else, or we could do it ourselves, potentially. I don't know if a building inspector needs what kind of training it takes to do that on, but other cities have just taken that on themselves. So, but that fire inspection piece, fire marshal piece, and the payments on a fire station indeed are parts of our continued fire expense. There'll be a much smaller line item for fire, but you still won't get rid of all of it.
Councilmember Cavalier, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to be fair, so what South County Fire is offering, these kind of a la carte services, they're not unique to Mill Creek. Everybody pretty much pays those that we've discovered in our negotiations, that it's just how they operate. So I mean, to Councilmember Duque, if that helps, we're not special. We're not getting the railroad deal. It's part of the process and part of what they offer.
Yeah. So there's a late breaking addition to the lineup here. That up here because the city manager and I this afternoon were talking about it and he realized and said this really well, I thought. So we are looking for, our objective overall is a conservative approach to providing the fire and EMS services we all depend on. I mean, we get down in the weeds. I'm jumping right into Karen's presentation. We're just running off, but that fundamentally, we've been a very conservative city for many years. We have taken a conservative approach to how we are going at this. We're jumping down into it, but I think fundamentally for me, we're starting to talk about principles here in a second, but a conservative approach. You as council have done a good point to get us to this point. We're looking for what's the way we can be sure we don't have a risk, don't have a black cloud over us about how we're going to provide fire and EMS. So that's kind of fundamental, at least helped us this afternoon kind of bring ourselves back up out of the weeds. So I offer that as maybe a guiding principle that we can either add to or just kind of keep it on the wall so we don't forget. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to do a weird thing now. I'm going to try. Let's see if I can make this happen. The first question, let's see, I got to do two things at once. If I can't pull this off, we'll have Martin help. But really the first question, this is the homework I threatened, and I may not have to take too long, but I really thought it was important for us to talk about, again, in Karen Reed style, what general policy principles and goals are important to guide your decision in this fire expenses. So what kinds of things, either words or short phrases that we want to keep in front of us? How are you going to make the decision? What do you think is important to taxpayers as you make a decision with what you're going to do with this $2.6 million that you have a decision to make on? Does anyone care to go first? Councilmember Bond.
Thank you.
So your summary there about trying to provide the necessary service that we all agree is essential. How do we do it within our budget? They're coming at us and have said it's going to be 7 and change, nearly 8 million more. We don't have that currently in our existing budget. While we have at times not raised property taxes, so we have a little bit of bank capacity, but it's only about $100,000. That doesn't get us real close. We do not have a utility tax on our residents. So if we go with the 6% allowed by law, we could take about 4 million was what we were told a few years ago when we studied that number. It might be a little more, it might be a little less. That gets us there. That gets us a lot closer. I don't want to do that. Also, I believe, having dealt with this challenge for a long time, I've given up. And I accept that annexing into the fire district is probably the more efficient and proper way to provide the service. We have tried to be the advocate for the citizens to negotiate a good deal, and we have done a good job, which is part of the problem today, because that price is going big because we have historically done very well on negotiating on behalf of the citizen. Now it's going to involve citizens getting involved with the fire board and the commissioners and holding the fire services accountable and doing that work, but we won't be doing it. Someone else will be doing it. The taxpayers will decide on levies and EMS and other things, and hopefully hold, the fire service accountable for where they're spending the tax money, but it won't be us. This just seems like an efficient way to go. And I'm trying to avoid those big tax increases. This is a big tax increase. It's one pocket or the other. I get that. And I understand the frustration there, but we're going to have to pay. It's either the citizens see the merit in going down this path, that this is the efficient way to pay for the service. Maybe they buy into the commissioner's historical position of it's equitable because all residents in the district are paying the same amount. And I hope that they'll look at it. I will say this, I personally I appreciate you giving us option 4, but I can't embrace option 4. It'd be financially devastating for the city. We're already in a tough spot. That's why we're having this discussion. So
That's going to help with the question number 2. So what I heard Councilmember say, and I might have missed something, but you talked about efficiency. It seemed like an efficient way to go. You talked about taking care of our citizens was important to you as a deciding factor, avoiding big increases. Other words, phrases. Okay.
So I had building and then also maintaining trust was really important for me in terms of goals to guide our decision. Is how can we make sure that the citizens have definitely trusted the city council to make these types of choices. And so I want to make sure that we are continuing to maintain that. So that was my big one for this section.
Great. Who's got one? Connie, go ahead. Excuse me, Councilmember Allison.
We're changing the relationship between the fire service and the citizens, right? It used to be the city negotiating, advocating for the citizenry. Now they can step up and be part of the fire board, right? So maintaining and building that trust. I can't really think of it's changing the relationship between the citizens of our city and their fire service.
So how about recognized changed relationship? Is that kind of the
Sure. that
essence
works.
there? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think this is a complicated issue and we need to keep it as simple as we possibly can.
Yeah, so simplicity is important because it's difficult. This is, you guys have been working on this. It makes my brain hurt, so.
A maintain level of service. When we started down this path, I think I was more leaning towards option 2, thinking about, what are we providing? And if we didn't return 100 cents, what could we use a portion of that for? But the only difference, I think, between option 2 and option 3 for us is timing. And what changed it for me was the bank capacity, because if we lower it, as some have argued, so it's revenue neutral to the city, so we return 100 cents to the taxpayers. we still have that capacity so we can make an informed, educated decision as part of the budget process at the end of the year. Is there something we want to raise taxes back up for to fund? We don't have to do that now. And in either scenario, we get the money at the same time. If we only returned 95 cents on the dollar, that was our decision, we're still not going to see any of that money to the earliest next May, just as we would if we made a decision in November with the budget to raise taxes and do something down the road. So to me, going back to the simplicity, I think that's the simplest thing that preserves the most options for us. Is let's take it, make it revenue neutral to us. Let's get the positions filled. And then let's go through the budget process to see where we're at in the fall and identify needs and discuss with the community. Is there something else we want to do? And then we've got that bank capacity to consider using.
Yes, we've got the timing and the bank capacity. Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Director Todd. The mayor kind of just said it all there. There's no, I mean, we don't really have to make a decision. I mean, we can kick some ideas out there what to do with surplus, but there's an expectation of service that our citizens in Mill Creek expect. Our high precision timing on police and fire comes with a cost. So, you know, I believe that if you're going to give it a little term, bang for your buck is something that the citizens expect. And that's what we would deliver here. And since we're talking about this, I don't even know what that would look like and how complicated a process it would be to refund the citizens for taxes collected. And I would also ask Grant that when we collect monies on the basis for fire services, can we just arbitrarily spend it on anything else? I'm not sure of that one. And can we, would it even be logistically possible to just start cutting people checks? It's already collected and in the bank. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we have been sloppy in our discussion. So basically, in 2023, we no longer will collect the presently 37 cents per thousand for your EMS levy, $1.7 million. We can't collect that. That will have expired. And particularly if annexed, you can't do that. We would just vote, like I said, in November, you guys would decide for your 2023 tax assessment to just lower the rate, the total number of dollars from 6.6 down to 4 million. If you took the 2.6 off. Remember, 6.6 is what we collect right now. You guys all voted to take in 6.6, divvy it all up. That turns into a rate. Everybody paid their fair share of 6.6. You would just, on November, you would say, we're only going to charge you 4. And that's what I think voters are looking for as they vote for annexation. That's where our communication folks would tell us what that means. But so that's how you do it. So you don't give money back. You just don't collect it. So I apologize. We've been sloppy.
No, it hasn't. And I just, maybe I said it wrong. So I guess I would go a little bit further. Can we even, we have monies collected already, correct? They're not suggesting that they be paid back then, right? Paid back to the citizens, right? It's just simply, they would pay less of a rate when it comes to the fund. Again, that's been confusing to me. It's been confusing to others as well. So, yeah, it's a tough topic, but they do have an expectation of service. I'll go back to what I said before.
Yeah. Okay. So service expectation, getting bang for buck. Councilmember Steckler, other thoughts here, principles and goals.
Just to clarify when I answer, you have the top of your chart, principles and goals, but on your question over here, it's what about the expense, removing fire expenses from the budget? So that's why I want to stay focused with.
Exactly.
Okay. So I would want to, if it's about removing fire expenses, make it citizen focused, number one. And if it's citizen focused, we know the citizens are paying 88 cents per thousand valuation. We know the EMS levy is going to reduce 37 cents, produce 37 cents of that. And that's going to go away, which leaves 51 cents. So in my opinion, the city should reduce taxes by 51 cents per thousand, 100,000 evaluation. And the citizen is now made whole. The city is reduced by 51 cents, but the citizen has now been reduced by 88 cents. Okay, so the important thing is the citizen has been charged 0.88 for fire service. We're going to get you down to 0. Now, the choice is option of annexation. That's an additional increase from what you were paying, which was 88 cents to $1.51. That's a whole different story, which we need to talk about, and I'm sure you're going to brainstorm.
A little
But I
bit,
think
yeah.
the important focus of this is let's focus on the citizen. What's the citizen paying? 0.88. EMS goes away, that's 0.37. We're going to reduce by 0.51. Citizen, you're now down 0.88. Okay, we're at 0. And the city is now down 0.51 in revenue. We've lost, we're gonna reduce that. We're okay with that. We're okay with that. But we don't have any money to provide back any benefits, which I'm sure will be another question you're going to bring up in a few minutes. But right now on the fire charges, I would make it citizen focused because it's simple.
Really important to think about citizen focus. Okay, good. City manager, do you have one to throw in there?
Well, we already mentioned the, just making sure that we're conservative, that we're thinking, there's a lot of risk involved going forward in the next number of years. And I think it's really important that we address this from a long-term standpoint. That's just my overall thought, Mike, as we discussed earlier today, and as we have been discussing over the long term, that we do have options, as the mayor mentioned, over the next few years.
I think we need to be very careful with the numbers because I think Councilmember Steckler inadvertently said it would take us down to 0. 88 cents is not the full city levy. That is the portion of our property tax levy, including the EMS that we use to fund the fire contract.
Yeah.
It takes the citizen to 0.
No, it does not.
The citizen
It does not take the citizens to 0. It takes what is our total levy when including the EMS? It's $1.50 or
$1.29 plus
$1.29. So it would reduce
is today.
if we made it revenue neutral to the city and if we stopped collecting from the taxpayers the amount we need to pay the fire contract, they're still paying taxes to us.
Right.
And so that's why I just want to make
Correct.
sure we're clear because there was a comment that said we'd take them to 0. And that's,
In regards to their contribution to the fire.
no, I understand. I'm
Just a
I
fire.
don't want people doing the public listening to this interpret and mean, oh, if we do this, we're going to
No.
taxes down to 0.
And I'm not quite done with my explanation on that. There are other things I would suggest if we went that route. I wouldn't stop there, but I don't want to step on your toes, Director Todd, because I think you're going to ask about what else we would like to do. So
Yeah,
I
good.
would not stop with my statement there. I have more to go with that, but I don't want to step on your toes.
Thanks.
Councilmember Bond, you had a.
Back to you.
I said a lot at the beginning. Thank you. Being a good steward of the taxpayers' money is a priority, but not only the short term, but looking out longer term too. I wouldn't want to do something that sort of in the short term look good and then 5 years from now have to tap into that bank capacity a whole bunch, where if we had just sort of thought out the 5-year, 10-year plan a little better, might not have to do that. So
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that's kind of where I was trying to go with my comments, is that this isn't somehow a found pot of money. It seems to be the way, the flavor that some in the public may be thinking, that this is just some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that the city has, will have lying around. And so when I see what you've put here, conservative approach, we're still, to Councilmember Bond's point in the very beginning, fire services is still going to have to get paid. We're still going to have a gap in what we collect. There's still fees that are going to need to be collected and fees that are going to be paid. So anyway, that's where I stand.
So I got that as conservative, good stewards, long and short term. Other things, other ideas, it's not the be all end all. Are there other concepts we've missed between those two so far? Other things that you think are important for us to consider as you make this?
A point I'd like to make is if we do take care of the dollar amount first, we need to think about the services that we're offering. If you're going to tell me that I'm going to go up from 88 cents to $1.51 with nothing more than the same thing I'm getting now, that's a tough nut to buy. So I think we need to look at a value equation of what kind of service or what changes we're going to make. Because right now, if we just follow my suggestion, that's a very hard sell. That's a very hard sell. People aren't going to vote for annexation because they're going to say, I don't know what's in it for me. Why would I do that? There's got to be something else.
That's the later part of the discussion.
That
of
is the
what
later part of the
what
discussion,
if.
but I think that's the
That's-
part we need to move on. That's a very important.
It's
value.
equivalent to going to the Mercedes dealership and then saying, how much is that new car? And he says it's 60 grand. You say, well, the last Mercedes I bought was only 40. It doesn't matter. That's the price of the car today. So yeah, you got a good deal last time you bought a car, but they're not going to avoid this. The taxpayer can't avoid this. We're not going to disband fire service. It's just simply how they're going to pay it.
But they can vote to not.
They can
annex.
vote no, we will raise their taxes. We will find $8
Right.
million from them and we will pay the bill.
And that you're right. The education piece is going to be critical because no matter what, at the end of the day, the cost of poker has gone up. It's just fire service has doubled. It's not the council's fault. It's not the district's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the only game in town. And this is the freight that they're charging at this point.
May have grounds to look at the costs that fire serving. What are they paying chiefs, lieutenants and all that? And they can work that out with them. I mean, they have every right to do that. But that's beyond our control. We don't have any control over that.
They would have a stronger ability to do that if they're annexed, because we would have seats on their board, and possibly if the city, as I heard, might get split in the districts for them, there's a possibility that 2 of our citizens could get elected to that board, which would have the decision-making over those types of issues, which we don't have now. We have 0 representation in the Fire District 7.
Yeah, so I put down here, citizen voice with the future agency is an important thing for you to think about. Costs have gone up, we just plain recognize it. Education is important. Taxpayer must have fire and EMS. We can't just say we don't care for this anymore. We got to have it. Other concepts. We can always come back to this later, but I just want you to kind of think about this. And when we get to the second half too, also talking about what do we do if it doesn't pass? This may be helpful for us to think about that. Joe, you're standing there. Let's go to the second question. So this one may be quick, may not be. So then remember, cost neutral to the taxpayer. This is digging in our pocket, taking some of that other money that we use for other purposes and trying to make it so that the citizen who's paying taxes somehow has more money. He has that $1.51, as Councilmember Steckler said, to pay his projected bill with South County Fire. The Mercedes is now $60,000. Do we help him with the 20,000 he's short? That's a hard thing to do, but is that a goal is that important to you? Or is it desirable that it's going to take deep cuts or something else here? Is anybody in favor of doing that, or does somebody want to discuss that, or do we move on to the next one?
I'm not
I'm not in
in favor.
favor of hurting our city and hurting our services, because the reality is fire service has gone up. That doesn't make sense.
Do you know off the top of your head what our general fund revenue is projected for 22? Is it 9 or 10 million, 10 or 11?
Don't know.
I'm just trying to come up with some ballpark numbers. Say it's 10 million and we're paying right now 4.3 for a fire contract. So that means the rest of the services we provide are roughly 6 million. If we had to make it cost neutral to the city, that entire 7.4 comes out of that same 10 million bucks, assuming we don't raise taxes. So either we cut or we raise taxes, or a combination of both, and none of those options are palatable to me.
Yeah, the number, Laurel could chime in, but the number is not 10. It's more like probably 15, 10, 12 to 15. But yeah, it's a big hunk.
What we have historically done as a council is we've looked at the services we provide. We said, are they necessary? Are they something that can't efficiently be provided in another manner? Parks, police, fire, roads. And we've done a good, I stand by the decisions that have been made on my time on this council. I believe we do run a pretty lean city. We aren't frivolous. We aren't overpaid. We give our citizens a pretty darn good bang for their buck. But we're always having to do that. Is this necessary? I look around and see it is. So it needs to be funded, just like fire is going to need to be funded. If we agree that the stuff we're doing now is necessary, then option 4 is not acceptable, because we would have to cut into things that are necessary. And I don't think that's consistent with what the citizens want. Now, if I was to get feedback from the citizens that said, yes, we want you to cut it, we want a lower level of service in parks and police presence in public parks and recreation service, whatever, I would do that, but I don't believe, I've never heard that. So I'm not going to be in favor of it until I do hear it. If I hear that, I will do the will of the citizens that gave me the chance to be here. But right now, I think what we're doing is necessary. We need to find a way to fund it.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'll just be quick. Over the years, and I think everybody up here, the mayor and a few others have kind of beaten this topic to death, that we have really negotiated some very favorable contracts on behalf of the city when it comes to fire service. Public needs to understand that doesn't exist anymore. Contract service does not exist anymore. It's a white elephant. It's not something the two providers of fire service in this community are offering. And so the more we stick to the message and understand option 4 is not even viable. It's not doable. I mean, we have been conservative in our budgeting and our tax increases or lack thereof over these years. So I couldn't even pretend to understand where $3 or $4 million extra might come from cuts. I couldn't even fathom what that would look like. And I don't think the citizens could either, especially with the expectation of services.
So I think I'm hearing, I
Comments from this end of the dais? No?
think we're done with that one. So Joe, let's roll the next slide there. So that was option 4. So that's off the table is what I'm hearing from you. So now revenue neutral, this is what we've talked quite a bit about. Revenue neutral is reducing our tax rate in 2023 so that we reduce from the 6.6 that we collect now in general property taxes down to 4. That's the 2.6 that's going back. As Councilmember Steckler said, that's about 51 cents per thousand. So that plus the 37 cents that we no longer can charge because we no longer have fire as a service we provide gives us the 88 cents. So what do you see as the pros and cons of the city revenue budget neutrality? It might be ditto on some of the things we've already talked about, but real quick, what are the pros and cons on that? Is there anything that hasn't been brought out yet or that we want to emphasize? Go ahead.
I was going to say that we're aiming to minimize hardships for residents. And then the other one, kind of the phrase that stuck out to me in my long paragraph that I wrote to myself was, aiming for the best deal for our, for everyone in the city.
I think
Minimize hardships and then best deal. Okay.
to me, the most important number 1, 2, 3 through 10 is simplicity. The reality is we have a short time frame to get this done and convince the voters that this is the right thing to do. And the more we start talking about returning 82 cents instead of 88 cents, or it's just going to be a complicated message to try to explain. And so to me, the simplicity of making it revenue neutral to the city gives us the best chance of convincing the voters that this is the thing that should be done.
Yeah, so put down non-complex. Sorry, I'm going to write in a way you guys can't read probably. Non-complex and easily communicated to voters.
Could I ask just a question on your comment though? Are you, you're agreeing with giving back to the citizens the money we spent for the local fire service or not?
That's what the option 3 revenue
Yeah, so
neutral
you're in
is.
agreement. You're just saying, make it simple.
No, I'm saying that is the simple option. It's the simplest one to explain to the voters.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I
Opposed to
understood you
option
correctly.
2, and then we have to haggle over whether or not we want to return 75 cents instead of 88 cents. And if we're not returning all 88 cents, what are we going to use that 13 cents for? And is this project better than that one? That it just leads us down a bunch of rabbit holes that I don't think we need to go down at this point.
Basically, we're saying the same thing, just different ways, but we're saying we're going to reduce the expenses that we were being charged to fire service in your taxes and give it back to you.
Yes, the amount of taxes,
Yeah.
reduce them so that the amount of taxes our residents were paying
Yeah.
that funded the fire service through the EMS levy and our general property tax levy would be reduced down to 0 for the city, which would, so 129 minus 88.
129 minus 51.
Well, so but I'm
37
rolling
goes
the
away.
EMS levy.
Because the
in there
EMS takes
too.
the other portion of it.
129 plus the EMS,
Okay,
that's 166.
okay.
I wrote it wrong, 166.
So we're being on it. We're being transparent with the citizens that, look, we're giving you back what we spent on fire service. If you annex, you're not paying that fee in addition to what was paid in the past for fire service.
Yeah, if we took it down to,
That's the main
not
point.
collect for that fire, they would not be paying the city any money to pay towards fire service.
Yeah.
They'd be paying it all in their taxes to the fire district.
But the citizens want to know, I would think, Mike, what more I'm paying. And I think if we can make that relevant to a citizen, something like, on an average home, I believe we talked about was $600,000 average price of a home in Mill Creek. This increase equates to about $498 a year for the fire service, correct? If it's $1.51 minus the 88 that they were spending, that increase is about $498 more than they were spending on fire service.
I can't quite make that number work.
Well,
I'm
let's
struggling.
get some examples when we actually have actual numbers. So we don't, I agree with you. I see where
Okay,
you're
so
trying to go.
let's just write down the word. I want to make it relevant to the citizen, relevant to them, how it impacts them.
About
what is this?
$378.
Yeah, thank you. That's the voice of the finance director. She's calculated the rate that is the $1.66 minus the 88 cents times $500,000 house. And she got 378, I think was Laurel.
$600,000 house. The difference, so you've got $1.29 is your general levy for 2022 is what they're estimating. And the EMS is at 35 cents. So it's dropping from 37 because we had a higher assessed value. And that's going to give us $1.64. And with the changes between the 89 cents, the EMS levy, you're talking about $378 for a $600,000 house.
Just trying to get the difference for the annexation rate versus what they were paying. How much more am I paying per year?
$378.
For your average house. Your average 600 and something $1,000 house is our average house in Mill Creek right now.
And Laurel, what is that on a per 100,000 evaluation? How many cents?
Um,
That helps.
About 63 cents.
Get ourselves confused, but I think that philosophically,
I just took the $1.51, which is the annex rate, and I subtracted 88 cents, which is what they've been paying.
okay,
That's what I did.
if you look at the difference, so that's 70 cents ish times $600,000 is 400 something dollars.
That's
So
what I
that's the
did.
378 number she gave you. I think that foots.
Either we need to clarify, make it relevant to what it means to the citizen. Because if we can do that, it helps bring it home to what we need to do as a city to continue to provide fire service.
Councilmember Duque.
I realized I didn't include my con for this option. And that was that aspect I had mentioned about where do we get that money for the fire marshal, building inspection, admin, anything associated with this? By doing option 3 and saying we're not, taking anything, then we'd have to find where that money comes from, since that falls under option 3.
For the fire marshal, fire inspection, or the fire station, which we said is a small number in the whole realm of things, but it's not insignificant. It's $160,000.
Well, just to be clear, it'd be an issue under option 2 as well.
Under all, it's under annexation.
It's under any of the issues, whether that we have to figure out how to fund that. It's not a matter of it falling into one option or another.
Well, but this one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but option 3 means that we're not collecting that.
Well, we're not
Fine.
collecting it, but that doesn't mean that we
Not this
decide
purpose,
to
correct.
cut something else from the budget to fund that. So we're not increasing taxes. We're just finding someplace in the budget.
Yes, yes, from where it would come. That, thank you. That's the clarification. I think for me, it was more the language in terms of making it simple for residents. That was my, the con for this one is that you're not, you have to explain that we're still finding that money. It becomes like a little bit of a complication instead of just saying nice and smooth, we're not collecting for this. That was my comment.
I have a con on this one too. I don't see maybe I said already, we've been on it a while, but I don't see the value to the citizen on this change. On this option. I'm paying a lot more to get the exact same thing I've been getting.
That's a con under options 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Well, under option 2, we retain some of the money. And I believe one of the options under 2 is if we retain some of the money, we could provide some additional services that we could put into the package and say, yes, we're going to go into annexation and yes, you're going to pay more. But by doing this and going into annexation, we freed up some funds that we're going to use for these additional services that you will receive. This one, we don't have any additional fees for any additional services under this one, under 3. We do under 2, but not under 3.
And the net taxes would be going up
Even
under
more.
that solution, right? If we hold, they're gonna go up either way, but
It's a matter of who collects the taxes.
who collects the taxes?
it's-
And
yeah.
and I guess the most honest option from my perspective is option 3. We quit collecting for the fire services out of our general fund.
Under property tax.
Yes.
And you're not going to
And
pay for it under
this-
annexation tax.
Yeah, it goes through the annexation tax. I think that's easier to swallow from a citizen's perspective, at least in this scenario that we're talking about.
This goes,
And I agree. Sorry, I didn't get to talk about that option yet before I got pulled down. I also think that is, as the mayor said, and I said earlier, that's the most simple way to go about this. And it, to me, is the most fair way to go about that. Yes, we're gonna have to pay more if we move into an annexation, but the city is not going to keep money for itself. On top of that, we will give back what we have been collecting for fire now that the fire money is going somewhere differently. And so I just feel like that's just the most upfront with our residents that we can be. We're not holding something back for ourselves here. We're giving you back what was for fire, now that fire is coming from a different bucket, basically.
Councilmember Allison, I've tried to put in that citizens pay through, through direct taxes to the providers. That what you're trying to capture there as a pro, that simplicity again, one of those things.
yeah, I think we need to be clear with the public. This goes back to Mark's comment. This is not a question of the quality of the service. This is a matter of who they pay their taxes to. Do they pay it to us? Because we have to raise the tax if they don't want to annex, or do they pay it to the district? To John's point about what they get, I mean, there is something that we talked about last week that I think is very important. That's what we were able to negotiate with the fire station, with the fire station. If we had annexed to fire district, pushed forward with annexation to Surfer, they were going to make us give up all of our rights to that fire station. That would go away under the deal that we're have with South County. We at least have the right of reversion in the event that they decide to locate a new station elsewhere. We get the rights back to that property. So I think there is something that we negotiated for the taxpayers out of that.
I think from a taxpayer standpoint, I don't know if that gets complicated, but they want to see something intangible they can touch today that they're going to get, that they're not getting with this increased money. You're going to ask me to spend a lot more money. I get fire service, which I'm getting right now. Be nice if I get fire service and something else, which is what we're going to go into right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to suggest maybe we flip to the next one there. Go ahead and Joe, but it's that option 2. So parcel reduction, parcel retention, what would you do? Pros and cons of keeping some of that money. I put a couple of reference points in there just to think about it. And this is what Councilmember Duque already talked about, the fire station purchase, fire marshal, fire inspection. You might say that's important for us to fund somehow out of this 2.6 out of some other place. But I put down some things that just kind of ballpark numbers to help you. So if you were looking at some other service, one way to think about it, every $255,000 you retain for us to spend, is a nickel on that rate. You heard people talk, oh, it's only a nickel. So go from 88 cents down to 83 cents. It's only a nickel. What would the nickel get you? It's $255,000. What does that mean?
A year.
A year, excuse me. Yeah, a year forever. One FTE costs you 100 grand if it's a very inexpensive employee, 150 grand if it's with equipment and a vehicle and things like that. So figure something between 100 and 150 a year. If you said, I just want one person, it's going to cost you 2 cents or 3 cents per thousand. Doesn't sound like much, but it does add up to real money at some point. So that's the kind of ways you could think about sizing this. But really, what are the pros and cons of option 2? Are there things that are pro that you'd like to think about, or con? This time I'm going to make you kind of put a pro or cons explicitly, because last time we had a lot of pros and a few cons. But tell me plus or minus when it is, when you go on it.
I think a con is that it's really hard to explain to everyone what you're doing if you're keeping back some money, because then you've got to be like, well, we're going to keep back this percent of this instead of giving back all of it. And then that's going to mean this, but then we're going to provide this. It just becomes an even more complicated narrative to tell everyone.
Yeah, it's a more complicated narrative to be able to tell like that.
The other con is there is not enough time. We are just over 90 days away from this annexation vote, if that's the decision we make next month. And I do not think there is enough time to have a fully transparent, thorough discussion of what we would use that extra money we retained to do. And the pro to me of option 3 is we can do that in the context of the budget this fall and have bank capacity if there's something we decided we wanted to use. So option 3 would afford us that time. Option 2, to me, the biggest concern is there is not enough time to fully vet that.
Just might add to that as a pro here, we didn't have before, but time and the bank capacity.
The money and do something with it. And I think the tax, I actually like option 1, and I'll wait to make more comments there, but make a decision. This split the baby thing isn't going to work. It's not good.
Put down split the baby, not good.
Like in fairness for option 2, we should say that there would be bank capacity.
Yes.
There just wouldn't be as much as option 3, depending on how much we retained.
Exactly right. Yes, we shouldn't forget that. So put that down as a pro, that there's bank capacity in that fashion as well.
I'm going to offer a highly unusual thing for me, and a contrary decision input. There's a value to 2. What we're proceeding with here is whether or not we're going to take this to a vote, an annexation vote. And can we be successful with the annexation vote? And with 3, that option, as we outline it there, is going to make annexation a little bit more difficult to get approved. It's a significant increase. They're seeing the same level of service that they get, just a lot more money coming out of their pocket. Chances are going to be really tough to get that passed. Plus, it's also public knowledge. They already know there's a lower fee if they turn it down, and we've got a contractual fee that's been announced for the next 2 years. So it's going to be difficult to get that to pass. So that's why I have a concern with 3. With 2, I don't want to get down in the weeds. We get in the weeds here in the meeting. We don't have to get the weeds in what we communicate. But if we tell people that we're going to move to a new direction, we're going to outsource fire, and we need to talk obviously about the superior locations of the fire stations that South County offers versus our previous supplier, and the map you had really helps to illustrate this is a better service for our city, especially as we grow and look at growth and providing good access to and good additional support should we ever need it for a significant fire issue. But it would be nice in 2 if we could say, look, we're going to ask you for an annexation to go into this other fire district. There's all these benefits of the fire. Plus, it's going to allow us to also be able to this and provide this. And Mayor, I know you're right. We can't create this. This is only going to work if there is something, I don't know what it is, but if there's something out there that the citizens have wanted that we have not been able to provide, and this would allow us to provide that. I don't have the solution. I mean, you guys have probably been around longer and smarter than me. But if there's something that we could provide along with annexation, that will better ensure the passage of annexation. Because if annexation doesn't pass, then we got a whole new challenge on our hands here in the city. So I think kind of backing up for a minute, do we agree that the goal here is we want to move towards a vote for annexation and we want to do everything we can to ensure that the annexation gets approved? Then I think that 2 gives us a better shot at getting annexation approved, because we're not going to take all of the money, but we're giving back a majority of the money. We're going to keep some of the money to provide this service. I don't know what it is. What's a real hot button right now? What's very important to the majority of our citizens that they're not getting? I know police has been a big issue, I know, but maybe there's some other ones that could be the service that we provide because of option 2. So little contrary opinion, if we agree that annexation is a goal for us to get approved.
So I put down there, it offers citizens something new or enhanced with some of the retained money from the levy.
I respectfully but strenuously disagree, and I do so based on the calendar. It is January 18th. We have to decide by February 22nd what we're going to do. And when we do that, my understanding is we have to tell the voters, if we're going to not return all of the tax, we have to tell them how much we're not going to be returning. I don't know how we determine between now and February 22nd, how we make those decisions. So that's why I don't think option 2 is easier to get the voters to support. I think option 3 is, and then we can do that exact same thing you're talking about in the context of the budget this fall.
But the budget is separate from the annexation vote. And I think you're setting us up to fail the annexation vote, which is going to open up the new challenge of us having to increase our taxes to pay for the short-term fees that South Regional has given us. That's my concern. And I look at, I don't want to create something brand new here, Mayor. You're talking about a month away. Is there something, and kind of sort of, we're in the brainstorming session right now. So maybe, instead of shooting it down right now, maybe there's something that we could think about here that might come up, that this is just an idea right now. This is not a decision to move in this direction. This is just an idea that maybe there is something we can come up with that might work here.
Councilmember Bond,
What this is ultimately going to be.
Mike.
What this is going to end up being is a real test as to whether the citizens of Mill Creek trust this council, trust our financial decisions that we've been making over the years, and whether they believe us when we tell them the truth. This is a way to meet this cost. It's a different way. If you don't like it, we'll find another way to do it, but it'll be much more difficult. And it won't be any cheaper. There's no cheaper way to do it. We could, and option 2, I find overly complicated. If you like 2, then we need to just focus on option 1, which I think when we get to it is pretty credible. We're going to keep this money because we're doing necessary things. We're going to continue doing necessary things. We're going to enhance the necessary things we're already doing, i.e. hire another police officer or add to our existing park spaces. Or, we had some feedback over this snow event. Our public works guys stepped up, did a great job. That equipment, all the materials, they need to be stored somewhere properly. We're kind of not really doing it the way we need to. That's going to cost some money. And actually $2 million would just barely get us started with fixing the whole public works thing alone and not tackle any of the other things. But we just tell them what we're doing and why it's important. And if they believe us, they're going to support this. If they don't believe us, then they're not going to support it. We're going to have to figure it out.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I think I obviously disagree that option 2 is the easiest one to pass. And I do think there are some of us sitting up here that did spend months doorbelling and knocking on thousands of doors this year. And we do know what they want, and they want us to not charge them for extra things overwhelmingly. So to me, after talking to all of these residents this year, the only thing that I can do that I feel comfortable and that I feel comfortable that they will vote for would be to go to option 3 and give them back all the money that they're paying for fire. That to me is what we overwhelmingly heard at the door, was that people were not happy with paying taxes. They don't want to have to pay more taxes. And so to be honest with them and give them back what we can, that they're paying for fire right now, if they annex in, to me is the only way to go and to get it passed.
So I tried to summarize that by saying citizen, it goes against what citizens told candidates on the door. It's not everybody, but some folks said that.
Councilmember Cavaliers.
Thank you, Mayor. And I happen to agree with the Mayor Pro Tem and other members of council, but I also struggle with the idea of us having to pay a la carte services or fires. So, I mean, so to Councilmember Steckler's point, it's not the sexiest of options, but number 2 does actually give us some options of keeping a portion, not so we can fatten our wallets, but we do have some additional services. You put them as bullets on your presentation as far as paying for the building. That's not going away. It's a 20-year commitment, $100,000 for fire marshal, and who knows what lies behind doors number 3, 4, and 5. So I think there is probably an equitable amount that we can agree that we know there's targeted areas where we're going to have to spend it. So if we're pragmatic about it, I think we can figure it out. But 2, to Councilmember Steckler's point, again, does kind of get us there. It does give us that option.
Your virtual hand is up too. Does that mean you want to speak again?
Virtually.
I put down money for targeted items and a pragmatic was the kind of word.
Councilmember Bond.
Just another note here. If we were to do an option where we retain some money, every year we vote on a property tax increase. And if we look at the coffers and go, yeah, we got plenty of money, we can always say, no, we're not going to raise property taxes this year. Not going to raise them next year. We're not going to raise them down the road and act in that manner if we're looking at the cost to provide necessary services and saying we're collecting more than we need.
I think the only way I could get behind option 2 is if we retained only that amount that would cover paying $60,000 a year for the cost of the fire station and pay for the cost of the fire marshal services. So we're looking at what, 150 to 200,000 a year, depending on what the net fire service number is.
Put the 160. Fire inspection and fire station, 160.
Councilmember Allison will ask a question once you're done writing, so that you.
Thank you. Mayor Holtzclaw, I totally agree with you. Those 2 items are the only ones that I would consider, but I think it's a harder pill to swallow. I would rather deal with those in the budget cycle in the fall. It's just cleaner. And to Mayor Pro Tem Vignal's point, I knocked on a lot of doors and I didn't have anybody asking me. I would ask, what would you like the city to do that they aren't doing now? Nobody wanted to pay more for anything else, right? So overwhelmingly, I got no ideas, not willing to raise the taxes. So this is going to be a hard pill for anybody to swallow, right? Their fire services are going to be a lot more expensive, and it doesn't feel honest to me to hold any of it back.
Councilmember Duque.
Ditto.
That's the kind of comment I like. Succinct, to the point.
Beat that, 5 letters. Beat that in 4 letters.
5.
There's a theme from our end.
Other comments on this one? Should we move it to option 1? Oh, so I didn't put option 1 up here. So Councilmember Bond, I apologize. So remember, option number 1 was hang on to the whole $2.6 million, something good with it. I apologize. I was presumptive that I didn't think you'd want to go that far, but go ahead. let's talk about that one.
Smart bond, I was king of everything and actually. I would do this. Already are very. This would give us a small opportunity to enhance the service. Maybe look at hiring another officer, perhaps it means the public works services that we're doing. There's a variety of things. That being said, I can count to 4. So I am fine with embracing the neutral approach. What's left to me, I think option 1 is actually the best one for the fiscal long-term health of our city. But lone voice of the night, I'm okay.
But you're saying purely from the city standpoint, if you didn't think about some of the other principles you talked about before, you said, what's the best thing for the city to do? It's hang on to that money and enhance services.
And to avoid having to raise property taxes down the road, to avoid having to impose utility tax, cover the cost because we were short-sighted and didn't take this money down. And now we have to do banking. Hit it with a 3% or 1.2.
Pro that's in the best interest of the city. The con is I think it stands no chance and you know what of the getting approved by the voters. But I would agree philosophically with where you're coming from. Councilmember Duque?
Yes, that was my con, exactly that. But for the sake of the exercise, I still made a list of things that I thought, would work. And so I just wanted to flag them because these were things that I had talked to about with residents because I did get people who said, I'm willing to pay more if I get more. And I feel that. And so number 1 was, police, including admin support, which is, let me go with improving bike lanes for safety, library. And then the big one for me was actually the additional maintenance employee and staff budget in terms of the yard that we had seen before. Those are the things that I think would make sense if for some reason all of you went with option 1 and I had to go along with it, then I would fight for these are the things that I think it should go for. And that's it. Thank you.
I've got police and the support staff, bike lanes, library, maintenance employees, public works yard. There's somebody who does all of her homework. Look out. She's good.
I just, for option 1, I just worry what that looks like. Well, I am the taxpayer, but I mean, the first thing I would say is that, look, why didn't you morons discuss that when you were doing the budget? If you wanted 5 more officers or if you wanted a library roof or XYZ. So I could see to Councilmember Allison's point down there, it looks bad generally. But I like where Councilmember Bond's heart's at. I mean, there are some things and we do run a lean ship, but I don't think this is the way to go about trying to, keep it floating.
Yeah, again, I'd add timing to option 1, just like option 2. I mean, I agree with all these comments. I just don't think in the next 90 days, we can identify the projects that we're going to be able to sell. It's not even 90 days. We'd have to have it well in advance of that to be able to make the public relations campaign that the market consultant is going to be doing to try to convince the voters. I just don't think we have time. But we can have those discussions as part of the budget in the fall if we did option 3 and bank the capacity. Councilmember Bond?
The problem is this is the path to selling it, right? Give them the money back and then we sell it. We go, yay, you got your money back. And then boom, we bank capacity and we utility tax. We do all this other stuff to right our financial ship 5 years from now. And if I'm that citizen, I'd be irritated.
Well, what I was talking with option 3 would take us back to just not collecting for the fire to put us what we would need to cover our current levels of service. So we wouldn't be cutting anything.
I guess here's the next one. This is where Karen wanted us to get to. So what are their additional thoughts on the principles or goals? Are there things that we put on our principles or goals that we've now forgotten about? Are there pros and cons to taxpayer neutrality? I think you guys said forget that one. But the city budget neutrality, we've had a good discussion between option 3, option 2, or even an option 1 approach. Are there some points of consensus and issues on where there's not consensus? How do we move forward from this point? You don't have to decide tonight, but this is in the next couple of weeks. We got to figure this out. If this, for me, this is kind of like a buyer's remorse thing. You got to go and think about these things, but I want to make sure discussion tonight that you can go think about this, maybe talk to your neighbors, talk to your soul, wherever your wisdom comes from, to think about what are the issues that we're going to face. Give you sticky dots and go nuts, but I think we could probably go past that because it's going to get a late night if we don't. I got a lot more for the other side here too. Thoughts, Mr. Mayor? What do you think?
The lights just went on. I think Councilmember Bond beat Steckler to the punch. So Councilmember Bond.
Just to move the discussion forward, I'm with the other council members on the retain none option 3.
Councilmember Steckler.
I hear a strong consensus for option 3, which is retain none. And, no additional, what do they call it up there? Potential uses for freed up funding. There is no freed up funding. My concern on that one is for the council, my concern is I'm very concerned that why would the citizens vote for the annexation? And from a public relations standpoint, that's going to make it very difficult. Some of the things we've been talking about is to try and come up with some rationale or benefits or values or things that would help to make the annexation go through. This is option 3 is going to be a very hard road. I'm not saying I'm not against it. I just say it's what could we do to help our PR group ensure that this gets passed? Because right now the message is we had a great deal and we did the best negotiation we can. It's a fantastic negotiation. But still, we're going to have to go up. Your fire cost is going to go up, pure and simple. And here it is. And I mentioned this before. I don't know if this is a big issue to the rest of the council, but it is to me. Since the other options for not approving this have been made public, would the citizens not use that as a reason to not vote for annexation? Because they have other options here that are much cheaper to them. They wouldn't have to pay
What are
this.
their options that are much cheaper?
If the annexation doesn't go through, South County Fire is giving us a two-year fees for the next 2 years, which are substantially less than the annexation fees. So-
That's relative. If we still pay more than we're paying now, we've got to come up with $1.5 million.
But they'd be paying a lot less than they would for annexation.
For 2
So-
years.
For 2 years, yeah. So as a taxpayer, why don't I just turn this down and I'll do the 2-year deal for the next 2 years. My taxes won't go up as much. I'm sorry, I'm just bringing up the ugly, the subject a lot of people don't want to bring up.
City manager is going to point to this piece of paper and talk again, I think.
Oh, I am this one.
Well, go about whatever you can talk to whatever, but I think that's the trick.
One comment I'd like to make is that, we're talking about annexation, but they're kind of mutually exclusive of each other, the annexation, and we're talking about these pros and cons of each option. As we move forward, one risk we take is we don't know what the voters are going to do going forward. It's not just we're trying to give them a great deal. We're also we got to make sure that they understand that if it doesn't go the first year, there's no guarantee it's going to happen the next or the third. That's a risk we take going forward, is uncertainty, conservative. And that's why Director Todd and I talked about that today. We have no way of knowing what's going to happen in the next few years, regardless of what we choose.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. And so Surfer's proposal of contracting and us paying a little bit more now over the long term of their contract and the comparative data that Karen Reed did, we pay more. We pay almost 20% more. So again, for the voter or for the taxpayer, whatever we're going to call them, that's it just, I mean, that's why we're having this discussion to begin with South County Fire, is that their short-term proposal for a year or two may have been great, and it sounds great. And you know, when you're talking about it, but when you get down to the nuts and bolts, we're still in annexation with them. We lose the fire service, the firehouse, and we also end up paying more over the 10-year contract. So I think that would only probably harm us a little bit more if we stick it out contractually, and there's no other game in town after that.
Just to clarify, the 2-year contract is with South County, not with Surfer. That's the one that's the one I was referring to.
Oh, I thought you
South
said
County.
Surfer, but they both have 2-year.
Yeah, but I was
contracts.
referring to South County. If the voters don't pass annexation, we would go to the 2-year contract with South County, which is actually the same rates as Surfer's 2-year contract. So
No, it's the same rate, but as someone was just saying, we had an analysis that showed with those rates in the long term, it would still be more expensive not to annex.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Those rates are good for
Yes, they're good for 2 years, but the analysis, the slide, I can picture it that Karen put together, compared those costs of the two options, and it was still more expensive to the taxpayers to not annex and go with the 2-year contract with Surfer. No, with either one of them. With either one of them, it was still more expensive than just annexing now.
I didn't see that. I saw that it was more expensive with Surfer, but eventually you're going to go back to South County ultimately, which is $2 million cheaper than Surfer.
Yeah, we're going to end up at a better place with South County Fire. So you made the decision, let's go South County Fire because it's going to be 7.4-ish as opposed to 9.4-ish.
Right.
So you made that decision, good decision. But I like Councilmember Bond's analogy earlier. Sure like to drive a Mercedes. I used to get one for 40. Now there's 60 or 80. We're pointing people towards the 60, but the answer is no 40 available anymore. That's the hard thing to sell. That's the reality. Those of us who have been around for a while should have been saving those dollars and going, this is sure a good deal. But that's the tough part. And I think Councilmember Steckler is right. This is gonna be hard to sell, but that's part of it is selling the yes annexation. Let me take you to the next part because this doesn't get any more fun. And the next part is what do we happen if it doesn't?
Mike, so I don't have to interrupt, could do two things. One is on this topic, would anyone else find it helpful to hear from Liz Loomis and get her opinions, as she's the one that's going to be taking the lead on trying to sell this to the public? I mean, I don't know what others think. I would sure like to know what her opinion is, since she's going to be the one carrying the message. And then second, we need a motion to extend. How much time do you think we're going to need on this
We
topic?
get done by 9 o'clock.
Thursday.
I'm sorry? 9 o'clock, you think?
Yeah,
To-
did
to
you have other
cover-
actions or was it just?
We have this, then there's one action we have to take, and then audience communication. So let's just do 9:30. We don't have an executive session, so let's just do 9:30, so we don't have to do it a second time. Fair enough.
Motion to extend till 9:30.
Second,
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, let's see if we can rip along faster. If the annexation vote doesn't pass, then we got to do something and it has to happen pretty quickly. Down at the bottom there, you can see the trick is we would need to go a vote of the people again for something that I'll talk about in here in a minute. May 13th is the deadline. If you want to get on the August primary, May 13th is very shortly after an election happens on April 22nd. You might know how it went on April 22nd or 23rd, or excuse me, 26th, no, 22nd, or you might not. It might take a while, but we would be quick into doing something. So that's what the point is here. It's going to take several components, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm showing you again here. You probably can't do it with one bite in terms of psychological, but you might have to do it with one bite. So I'm going to try to expose you to those things here. So this is the complicated chart. I don't think we want to go through this again. You've seen this one. I'll answer any questions if you want to, but basically we're looking at the 2023 column. That's the service contract of about $6 million. 2024 goes 0.15. To do that, it's going to take a second annexation election in 2023 and or one in 2024. If that fails to get to an annexation eventually. Remember, nobody was willing to give us a short term for a couple of years. So you're facing some new election costs. Don't know what those are. It's small potatoes in the whole scheme of things, but don't forget that those elections will be out there. Fire station purchase, we've talked about that. Fire marshal service, we talked about that. But you look at the annual total, we need to find $6.1 million in 2023, where we only had 4.3 in our hands in the past. So here's what you need to look at. You can, these are the different options. You can renew the EMS levy. You can go up to 50 cents. You can do a special levy lid lift for the general property tax levy. We have up to $3.10 capacity. So we have lots of room, but you got to go to the voters and get them to lift that lid. But this is what the fire district and the school districts do all the time, is they go back up to the stat. Our statutory maximum is 3/10. There's lots of room. You could have another $1.81,000. You're never going to do that. You could spend reserves. Those are one-time things. And at some point you run into your 15% reserve minimum. We'll talk about that. You could spend those ARPA funds. That's again, some money that's you guys have been hanging on to, thinking about what do we do, but those are one. And you'd have to do something to supplant other revenues to have them apply for ARPA purposes. You could do a special assessment or fee. I'm going to give you an example of what Arlington did. It's pretty interesting. And utility tax. We hate to talk about it, but you can charge up to 6% without a vote of the people on various utilities.
Last time we visited that, they predicted it would be around 4 to 5 million.
Total, if you tax all the utilities people pay for. I can believe that's probably a good number. This from the December 14th presentation, this was the chart where we talked about, we had the levy at 1.7. If you raised it back up to 2.5, it did this, but the point of the red line was to pay just that fire contract, just the contract, not the other costs like fire marshal. You had to come up with another 800,000, 1.1 million, and then eventually 2.7 million if you didn't get this passed. So I've adapted that chart a little bit to look at the total costs. Now included the fire station, the fire marshal. It doesn't change it much, but I've also labeled these things. So you would still have your $2.6 million that you have in your general property tax levy. You'd have to go to voters and go from 1.7 to a new EMS levy that could be up to $2.5 million. That's the 50 cents. You still need to find another $1 million, or that's 19 cents per thousand. In the next year, it goes up a little bit. So you still can't go above 2.5. You're gonna have to find another 25 cents per thousand or 1.3 million. Maybe you could do that. But in 2025, if you don't get people to annex, it gets really expensive. So let's look at what that means. Well, just want to remind you the way the fire levy works. Right now it's 1.7. If you renew it, you could get 2.5. And remember, oh yeah, it goes up every year. We get 1%. 1% doesn't, it's just a rounding error. The 1% doesn't add up to much. So the point is it's 2.5 million that you get out of EMS levy forever. So here's some funding options. One of them was counting that 2.6 from a continued general property tax levy. Assume you could go out and renew that the EMS levy. That's kind of a standard thing. People generally vote for 50 cents for EMS. Sure, that's the rate you used to charge me. I'll vote for that. But we still need that $1 million. So here's one way to do it. Special levy lid lift on our general fund, our general property tax levy. You have to add that 19 cents. So the total rate would go from $1.29 that we were talking about earlier to $1.48. 2024, you'd have to go up 25 cents. So it'd go from $1.48 to $1.54. You probably wouldn't do that with a vote each year. You'd probably vote to do this once. So that would take a couple of elections, but you'd have to have after people said no in April, you'd have to get them to vote yes for an EMS levy at the primary or the general, and you have to get them to vote yes for this at the same point in time. So you're two votes if you did this. One way to do it.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Going forward, not for tonight, it would be helpful to me, and I don't know if it'd be helpful to others, to see exactly what you're talking about, but which ones we could do without votes of the voters and what we could raise with the approval of the voters, because it's hard to compare. I think we need to understand, what if the voters just get totally cantankerous and say no to everything? What are our options?
Yeah, good point. I can do that. Another way, you could spend down the general fund reserves. This is a short-term problem. It's a couple of years. We're going to get those guys to vote for. We hope. So in 2023, we need to look at the $1 million. So Laura would tell you you've got 6.5 in general fund reserves. She would set up a budget. So we spent that down. We have another $1 million to put into this thing as we needed to. So you'd have to go out and get the EMS levy voted for and approved. You probably could do that. And then you'd spend down your reserves. First year, 6.5 million to 5.5 million, probably okay. Second year, 5.5 to 4.2. That makes us nervous because now we violated our 15% requirement. So that affects any future bonds you'd want to get, but also makes nervous finance director, hopefully nervous city council, and maybe nervous taxpayers. Another approach, I mentioned this ambulance service fee. So what Arlington did was their fire department was costing them too much. They had to do something, and they went on their way towards annexing, and Karen's described to us how they've annexed in North County Fire. But they imposed a new fee called an ambulance service fee. They said, we can't pay for our services, so we're going to create a new utility called the ambulance service utility. We are going to stick it onto your water and sewer and surface water bill that we send out every month. We'll just tack it on there, and it's $10 a month per household. They talked to people. They said we could have made it more for assisted living facilities that call on fire more often and less for businesses or whatever, but they decided it was easiest just to be $10 per household per month. And then the second year, to make it work, we'd have to have $13 per month per household. And here I'm just assuming we've got about 8,000 households in Mill Creek. So you could do that. Really unpopular. Arlington, this went nuts. They did not like this, but because they had it set up so they could just councilmatically, they set up this utility, set up an enterprise fund and stuck it on the utility bills that they already had going out there. We don't have utility billing. So the overhead of setting this up would be incredible. But by parceling it out as a monthly fee, it made it a little bit more palatable. Everybody still hated it. But that is one way you could come up with $1 million in 2023 and $1 million and $1.3 million in 2024 without going to the voters. Last one I put here was the same thing. How do we find that $1 million, $1.3 million from utility taxes? So again, assume 8,000 households. If I assume an average of $225 per month for your total cell phone bill and your cable TV bill, just a couple of utilities, but think about apartments or young people, old people, single family dwellings, whatever, 8,000 households. Each household spends $225 per month for cell phone and cable TV bill. Felt like a reasonable kind of assumption. If you do that in 2023, you'd have to set a 4.6% tax rate. You can do that without a vote of the people. And just barely, guess what? I worked the numbers backwards. In 6%, you could do it in 2024. So that again is entirely within your control. You could do it, but it opens that dreaded utility tax topic, and it gets tough further out. So if you say, okay, we've failed twice to annex to South County Fire. Now we have to pay parity rates. Our citizens have to pay parity rates. They'll give us a contract, but it's going to be at parity rates. And so it's going to be $7.8 million a year. How do we find that? That means we need to find another 2.7 million. So you could do that general fund levy lid left that we set back in 2023. You continue that, get $1 million from that. You retain that ambulance service fee of $10 a month per household-ish. And you get $1 million from that. And you impose a utility tax at a 3.3% rate on those utility. But that's some votes, and that's a lot of different things. We stacked new layers on top of our tax stack. So this wasn't meant to be a downer, but this is the reality. If we don't have the annexation vote go for it, it is tough. And I think you are the elected legislative body. You get the tough decisions now, but it's going to be tough to go to the voters and get more money for one more public works person or for one more something or other when you've hit them with all these other fees. And so that's going to be a difficult thing. So I've lost some sleep and thought about how that would play this out. And I think, again, buyer's remorse, I'd like you to think about these with respect to your principles and goals and say, do any of these make sense? How would you do it? Because if we don't have a yes vote in April, we're faced with some variety of utility taxes, new fees, spending down the reserves, or some sort of special levy lid lift. And many of those require voter approval, which may be tough to do. So again, I don't know if we want to go through it again, but are there principles or goals that are different for this decision than the ones you talked about earlier for deciding to retain? I don't know that there's any, but is there something else that really strikes you that we should consider as you go forward, trying to queue up our discussion for next week on what do we do about this if the annexation doesn't pass?
The standard, is it they pass? So that's my question. Do we need to worry about it that much? Is it that big a deal? Do they usually pass?
They usually pass, and we do need to worry about it.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Everyone's a new
Thank you, Mayor. That makes the mayor's comment before about having Liz Loomis here to maybe have this conversation too, because that really puts, I think, like I said in the beginning, the emphasis on the education piece for us, that everybody has to know they're going to pay for it one way or the other. I mean, it's not going away. So again, that's my big disclaimer here, is that education, education, education. And don't forget, the school district's about to put something up on the ballot. So, I mean, it's coming at them in waves. So the more we can tell them, I think the more we can sell it.
And I need to clarify my earlier comment. Liz can't advocate for us. She's hired to help inform the public. And so, I mean, we'll get to those slides here in a minute. I would say the con for this for me is we have few choices and none of them good that don't require voter approval. I mean, really our option that wouldn't require voter approval is dip into the reserves, do a utility tax, or
bank capacity.
bank, raise taxes with bank capacity, or cut services. Those are our really, as I see it, our four options. So if we don't want to rely on the voters, we don't have a lot of good choices.
And when you say cut services, so we've got Public Works. I think there's 4 guys, right? So we could dump one. All right, now we got 100 grand.
Yep.
Dump,
Cutting is, they're not going to be able to cut our
you
way
dump
down.
three or 4 police officers, which I do not want to do. That's $500,000 maybe. I mean, we don't have the staff. We couldn't cut the staff to get there.
No,
We could give up all our pay. That's $1,000.
That'll pay for it.
Woo!
I'd do it if I thought it'd help us.
I would too.
I think your point was really looking at what the voters do or don't do. Liz would say this is a very hard one. She's been successful. She talked last night. She was giving us a sales pitch on her firm. We've already hired her, so that's fine. She said this is very hard because this is a big step. But I think you pointed out the education and making it obvious to people what they can and can't do may be helpful. We can potentially have her come and talk to us if that would be helpful next week. She doesn't have any magic bullets, but if you'd like to talk to somebody who's run more elections, that's a possibility.
Maybe just so the public can hear it, because I mean, I see, I mean, we hate the words utility and the word tax, compounded together, but there's no other option but to institute a 6% if it doesn't pass. I mean, there's just no other way to pay for fire services. So, I think that's Liz's job. That's her lift.
Councilmember Vaughn.
What I would love is to get, I'm so grateful for Will and Barb, they're here every night, every meeting, and they take the time to share about the things they're passionate about. So we at least hear from those 2 citizens. But I would love to have on our website, something saying we have a problem. We have a fire crisis. Come to the city council, tell us what you want. Tell us what your solution is, and hear what we're trying to deal with here. Because I do think if for the folks that take the time to figure this out and hear it out, the solution is sadly the one we've all landed on. They'll get there just like we did. But if you don't take the time, it's like taxes or no taxes, no taxes, but that's not really the choice. It feels like it.
Yeah, I think the thing I want to hear from Liz more than anything, she's the one that has to educate the voters. And so the one is to understand the timing of when we have to make our decision on how much we'd have to adjust our levy. And then to hear her opinion on, when would she need to have that information she's already said that this is an uphill battle. So when would we have, if we wanted to consider option 2 for anything more than the fire marshal and for paying for the fire station annual cost, when would she's probably would tell us if we brought her in here that she needed to know 6 months ago what we wanted to
She
do with
wanted
it.
it yesterday.
Yeah. Her normal approach is she would like a year on these things to really plan them out, strategize. So she is chomping at the bit to move us forward. So the soonest we can get information, and we've kind of promised that February 1, you guys are going to talk about it. February 8th, you're going to take some sort of motion that says we intend to do this with property taxes so you can forward. And she's okay with that. But if we go much past February 8th with this decision, she's not going to bail out on us because we're a paying customer, but it's going to get really, really hard. You may have not have noticed there's some FAQs we've started put on the website. Those went out today. There's a press release. Remember, she was talking about press release. The press release, I think, went out today or it's going to go out tomorrow, that invites people to come and have that opportunity to really speak about this February 1 and 8th, because you'll be in a position to settle in a little bit on some options, but listen to people. And I think that's important. Like you said, is the public needs to hear what's going on, listen to the citizens. 8,000 households won't come down here, but if there's 10 vocal ones that give you some insights, that's probably useful.
If 10 come in and hear the message and go back and tell 10 people why we need to do this, that's how this works.
Yeah.
We need their buy-in. We need them putting on Facebook their thoughts as to why this is good. We need them talking to their neighbors at the coffee shop as to why this it's going to hurt. And that's what's good about option 3. We're going to try and we recognize it's going to hurt. We'll do what we can to take the sting out without cutting services and try and find a path to partnering with you.
Last question up there is additional questions or data be helpful. You talked about a couple of those things. We'll talk about voter versus non-voter, voter approved options you've got for funding. If the things don't go right, we'll see if Liz can come and give us some general comments about her experience from running those kinds of elections. Is there other data that you need? I will go back and review all these. We'll type these up and get them back out to you as rough notes so you can look at those if that's helpful. Mostly just the process of going through this, I think, has helped us all kind of kick this idea around. It's a tough one. Grant, I think Grant's still out there. So I'm going to run your slides, Grant. You're going to tell me next slide when the time is, but Grant's got a few slides on this guidelines. Remember, it's really important that you can educate, but you can't advocate. And with that, Grant's going to make it even more clear. Go for it, Grant.
Thanks, Mike. Can you move the slide up one? And that is if there's only one message you take out of that is it's very simply this: the city can inform, but it can't advocate. Clearly, there's a lot of information, as your discussion shows tonight. There's a lot to learn about how this works, and also it's important to communicate that information as clearly and as simply as possible. The city is able to do that and has an obligation to do that. Quite frankly, we can talk about and provide the objective information about what the election means, how it works, what the impacts to the city budget are, what the impacts will be if the levy passes, how the citizens can not the levy, but the annexation passes, how the citizens can obtain a voice and a vote, and how their fire service is delivered, take the city out of being the middle man, if you will, and in between the service and the taxpayers. But the city can't be the advocate. It can't be doing advocacy. So there's a line there about where there's information. There is a need for it. And the city can inform and pay for it, informing the citizenry, but it cannot be advocating for or against the ballot measure. Can I have the next slide? And then we could say, well, what is the source of that rule? The rule is the public, under the Public Disclosure Act, RCW 4217A 555, which some of you may know from your campaigning. You cannot use public facilities for the promotion or opposition of a candidate or for the promotion or opposition of any ballot proposition. There are some exceptions to that. Well, obviously, one is there's a process where the city council can announce that it wants to take a position on a ballot measure. It can hold a public hearing and give both the proponents and the opponents equal opportunity to speak and then take a vote on it. You can also use communication forms in your normal and regular conduct. That's one of the rules that has been adopted by the PDC, so that you can utilize your normal outlets of communication. Why don't we move on to the next slide?
Grant?
Yes.
We just spent an hour advocating for annexation. How do we get away with that?
you spent an hour discussing why you believe that your decision, that the vote you took on how you want to proceed or how you may vote on annexation will work. That is debate. And it is a discussion. And I know you, and you're entitled to have opinions and to have your opinions on how you're going to vote reflected in your discussions at the dais. No problem there at all. In terms of once the city council decides to put the measure onto the ballot, the annexation measure, that's really what we're focusing in on, what these do's and don'ts are, Councilmember Bond. For instance, the city can use its normal communications channels to provide information to council. I think Director Todd was mentioning some of the things that are being done that are appropriate. We send out press releases about various things that the city council is discussing. We use the website and other social media outlets that the city has to reach the citizens to talk about this issue and the issues that are part of the decision-making process that you're going through right now, to encourage them to come to City Hall and talk to you, or to share in emails what they would like to see with respect to annexation or how future fire service should be delivered. You can provide and distribute information that explains the process of the election itself and the fiscal impacts that the election results will have on the city. So if there is annexation, what will be the impacts of the decisions that you make about, option 2 or option 3, for instance. All of that is information that is about the election and about its impact on the city budget. That's fair comment. And that's informational, not necessarily advocacy. Next slide, please. Here's what you can't do. Here's what the city is prohibited from doing. The city can't pay for advertising supporting or opposing the ballot measure. Okay, so if there's an ad that advocates annexation, the city can't do that. The city can provide information about what happens if there is annexation, what's the fiscal impacts, what happens if annexation fails, what are the fiscal impacts? These are the very things you were talking about tonight. Similarly, the city can't utilize its facilities, its staff, or any other resources in its possession to assist in the advocacy process. Next slide. And this goes now to the question of what council members can and cannot do with respect to the ballot measure. Obviously, the discussions that you're having now are about whether to put this matter on the ballot and understanding what the impacts will be to the city if it's on the ballot and passes, or if it is on the ballot and is unsuccessful, how will you provide service? You can take positions on the ballot measure, on a ballot measure after a public hearing. We just talked about that. You can have a hearing and discuss whether the city council wants to take a position on the ballot measure. You as a council member can report on the position that you take on that ballot measure and why you reach that conclusion. And similarly, if you want to become an advocate for a particular position, if you want to go out and advocate for annexation, for instance, you can do so on your own time. You cannot use your city resources, whether it's your cell phone or your computer or staff, to prepare materials in support of your advocacy for the measure, but you can do it on your own time and with your own resources. Next slide. And then oftentimes there's a question asked about, what about, can you use your own personal social media outlets to advocate? And the answer is yes, you can, with some, maybe be a little bit clearer here. One is, the city doesn't support or provide resources to any of you for your personal social media accounts if you have them. Some of you have them, some of you don't. Any advocacy that you show should clearly state why you personally are supporting the measure or opposing the measure. So just make that clarification that this is your personal position and you can talk about why you got there. And then also just bear in mind, because this involves a topic that does relate to your work as a council member, the Public Records Act may require you to provide your social media accounts if there's a request for information from your social media accounts about that issue. As we talked about when we were working on the governance manual, there are a few cases on this matter. There are some standards and tests that would apply to the scope of a public records request. But bear in mind, whatever you might put out there, it may be subject to being deemed a public record and being subject to being responded to under a public records request. With that very short summary, are there any questions about what I presented in the scope of what you can and can't do? Okay. Back to you, Mike.
Slide. So remember, next week we'll play this again. Hopefully we will not spend as much time as we've got other business to conduct, but looking for you to provide some general direction on the preferred path for the city budget. So think about that option 2, option 3, option 1, option 4. Keep on that. Think about it, talk about it, figure out where you might want to go. And we'll probably continue this discussion on the backup funding. We'll answer some of the questions that were asked here. And if you are up for it, we can talk about the difficulty of passing one or more additional voter approved options if you pick those. That's going to be a tough discussion. But again, we're headed for getting that just February 8th. And with that, we are done for tonight on this.
That.
Nice job, Mike.
Thank you, Director Todd. Appreciate it. Brings us to item G, City Attorney. Approval of a settlement agreement. No, I'm sorry, item F, resolution approving collective bargaining agreement. Can't hear us and we can't hear him.
Testing 1, 2, testing.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yeah.
It always helps when I put the unmute on.
It does.
So what we have tonight before you is a resolution seeking approval of a collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME. It's a 3-year agreement. It covers years 2020, 2021, 2022, and 23. The agreement covers approximately 12 FTEs at the city. The current contract expired at the end of December of 2020. So this agreement retroactively applies to 2021 and then applies prospectively to 2022 and 2023. There's a 2% increase for year 2021, and there's a 3.5% increase in 2022 and 2023. So our request tonight is seeking approval. I just wanted to share with you this agreement is being reviewed by the union right now. It is being recommended by its council. It is out. They're going to be having a ratification vote shortly. The vote was delayed a little bit because they've had people out sick. So they're now doing, I think, something like what you're doing tonight is a hybrid where they're going to have votes that will be perhaps online as well as live. So they're working through that and getting this approved by their membership at the same time. But we would recommend approval tonight.
It's for the city attorney. We have any motions?
Motion to approve resolution number 2022 I think we need to change to 623.
Correct.
A resolution approving collective bargaining agreement between the city of Mill Creek and Washington State Council of County and City Employees, AFL-CIO.
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, or the resolution passes. Thank you to everyone who worked on negotiating that contract for some time. Good job. With that, that brings us to last opportunity for audience communication this evening before we adjourn. Is there anyone who'd like to address the council? I see you, Will. Let's go, Mr. Nelson, go ahead, and then Barb.
Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive Southeast. Listening to you guys tonight is a prime example of why you want to keep this proposal to the voters very, very simple. If I was not very familiar with this subject, I would have been bored to tears. If you keep it simple, like USA Today newspaper, I think people have a much better chance of understanding what's going on. You'll make life a whole lot easier for your consultant and improve your chances of getting this approved. And in fact, if you give all the money back, I'll even vote for the damn thing, which would probably be the second time in my life I've ever voted to increase my taxes. That's how adamant I am on some of this stuff. But if you do what you did tonight, you ain't going to get this thing passed no how. No way. You got to keep it simple, guys. You got to keep it simple. And finally, your long-windedness cost me 45 minutes of free streaming on the last episode of Yellowstone tonight. So I am not all pleased on that either. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me because I couldn't hear you. Can you hear
Oh.
me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. A fire contract annexation issue is a really hard one. I am so glad I'm not on the council. None of the options are wonderful, as you very well know. I might be leaning to option 2 with only money being held to pay for the fire station and fire marshal. Otherwise, no. Though I haven't heard how much per 100,000 that would cost for people. My concern with option 3 is how we'd pay for the fire station and fire marshal. What would we lose to do that? So that's the only way I'm sort of leaning for 2, but need to keep it simple, very simple. On another issue, so I want to get away from that one. That's a tough one. In regards to the city manager position, I know there are some who object. Oh, shoot, I can't find it. There's some that object to having community involvement for different reasons. For those in the community who are involved in the city, I feel strongly that we should be allowed to participate in the process to select a city manager. This person will need to interact with the community and businesses. I feel it's important to be given some opportunity to give input for it. Thank you.
Else would like to address the council? Hearing none, we will be adjourned at 8:58. We'll see you next week.